All right, good morning. Welcome in Baseball and Coffee. It is 10 a.m., Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. Try to fix this view a little bit. Thanks for everybody who's here, hanging out. We're going to mostly look at the National League East teams today. We'll go through other rosters, see what they need. There was a lot of stuff that happened yesterday, so maybe we'll get started in a little bit of a different fashion today. As you saw in the thumbnail, if you looked at the thumbnail, we had the camel. So I was just curious who's even on these Baseball United teams outside of my guy Katz that I know. So let's see. See if we can look around a little bit. So there's 4 teams, the Mumbai Cobras. See if we notice any names popping out here. Akil Morris is a name that I've seen before. Mariano Duncan is the manager, former Yankee great. Who am I missing? I don't know. All right, let's go back and let's look at the other teams. Arabia Wolves. Alex Katz, that's my guy. Quitting writing my law school essay to watch the AO stream. Let's go. I love it. Thanks, Maya. All right, what else we got here? I don't know. Wilton Castillo? No. Don't know too many people on this team. John McLaren is the manager. All right, let me go back. The Mid-East Falcons. I feel like Severino Gonzalez. It's got a lot of elements of a name that I know. This team is very Japanese, it looks like. Oh, Munenori Kawasaki. Yeah, the Mid-East Falcons have Munenori Kawasaki and a bunch of Japanese veteran players, as well as a reality show winner. That's cool. Yeah, Hiroyuki Nakajima. I feel like I know that name as well. Alejandro De Aza. Is this guy Jake Hageli? Is that the guy that's not the guy that was on the Giants last year, right? Oh man, now I need to look. Jake Hageli. Who's this guy? No, but I wonder if he's related to the other Hageli. Nah. No, that's Sean Hageli. Is it just Jelly? I think it's just pronounced Jelly. Anyway, all right, moving on. The last team is the Karachi Monarchs. Enrique Burgos. I feel like there was more names a couple years ago. Didn't Pablo Sandoval play in this for a little bit? A few others, but I don't know. Jay Bell is the manager, so there's a name. I don't know. Kind of interesting. Got camels driving people in. Got all sorts of weird rules. So I don't know. That's what's going on now. You okay?
No.
I know, that's weird. We tried to make a call to somebody yesterday for some information of somebody who worked on our house. We got a text back from the wife saying that he had passed away. So it was kind of jarring. Brett did not love that this morning. All right, what else we got here? Let's check our lead-on standings real quick. Man, Aguilas, 16-3. Are you kidding me? That's a crazy record. Toros hanging in there 10-10. I'm curious who's on my Toros this year. I want to go look at their most recent game, which was a while ago. Let's see here. Let's go to the box. I'm curious who's on my Toros this year. Tavares. They played Aguilas. So Celestino, Oliva, Candelario, Brian De La Cruz, Pimentel, Denzer Guzman, who's an Angels shortstop. Yairo Munoz, kind of a legend. They have Eloy Jimenez, who came off the bench in this game. Pitching, Aaron Brooks, Batista Minier, Soriano, Jimmy Yacobonis, Carlos Pimentel. On the other side, Robert Stock got the start for Aguilas. That's legit. Who else? What Carrasco is this? Dury Carrasco. That's not Cookie. I thought for a second maybe Cookie went down there. Anyway, we know that the Aguilas team is crushing everybody, though. But anyway, curious to see. More jobs in baseball is a good thing, even if the weird rules are off-putting. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I just think it's interesting. I don't know what the vision is necessarily for Baseball United. I think, considering when they play, if they pay more money, they might be able to attract some better players over there for winter ball. So that's a possibility. All right, so a couple things before we get into the teams, a couple things that were kind of wacky that happened yesterday right off the rip. I mean, Grayson Rodriguez for Taylor Ward. This one really confused me. I know Taylor Ward, I believe, was one year away from free agency. So this is a 1-year situation. Is that what's going on? Let me go see his contract situation here. Here it is. Yeah, it's just an ARB situation. Yeah, and that'll be a free agent 2027. So I don't know. This was a weird one. When we were looking at the Orioles and their needs the other day, I thought it was mostly pitching, and then they go ahead and they give up on Grayson. Not give up on him, I guess. Ship him out for a piece they like, but the Angels are getting a lot of upside here. He's really only pitched 43 starts in the big leagues. The first year was kind of Metza, but he was 23 with a 4.35. Second year, 3.86 and 20 starts. Over a strikeout per inning. The walks were good. A little too much home runs, but you can definitely work with this package. It's got good velocity. I know it's been an injury situation. Let's go look at we looked at him a little bit the other day, and I was like, man, they need this guy to hit if they're going to come back. So I thought this was an interesting move for both teams, really, with this trade. Angels, one thing that I've heard a little bit around the game, and I'm wondering if anybody else knows anything about this, but when I talked to Buck Showalter in the offseason, one of our guys, our mutual friends, Dom Cheedy, is the director of pitching over there for the Angels now. He was a bullpen coach with the Mets. I think it was 23, the last year of Buck. And Buck told me that between Dom and some other people, they had put in some protocols and they had really good health with their pitchers, scary good, almost no Tommy Johns for an entire year. And they were starting to feel really good about their pitcher health program, shoulder protocols, elbow protocols. So maybe that's why they would take on a Grayson Rodriguez. They feel like they have maybe the medical wherewithal to work around whatever his issues are and what they have been, and then they're going to come out, with maybe a number 1, number 2, or number 3 style starter for the foreseeable future. And all he had to give up was 1 year of control over a guy that was in the last year of ARB was making a lot of money. So from the Angels side, maybe I understand it a little more. From the Orioles side, I don't know. I don't really get it. Now I got to go back to their roster again. I mean, we're going to do NL East today, I promise. But now I'm curious what it's going to look like with Taylor Ward in here. So they have him penciled in the left field. That pushes, I guess it's Tyler O'Neill currently to the bench because they have Basayo penciled in as the DH as of now. One thing they were kind of lacking, I guess, a little bit was some right-handed thump. So they're taking a little bit of a swing at that this year, which tells you that they're definitely trying to compete this year, which really tells me that they're planning on doing a whole bunch of other stuff with their pitching staff. They have to be, right? So I would expect more subsequent moves coming forth from the Orioles after this move. They cannot possibly be stuck with this. All right, let's see what we got here in from the chat. I can't understand it. Grayson's arm must be FUCKED because otherwise, why are you trading away pitching? Yeah, that was my first reaction. Nick's here. Orioles are stuck with O'Neill from opting in. Getting Ward doesn't make much sense when their issue is pitching. So we're all on the same page. We're all seeing it the same way. It tells me there's more stuff forthcoming. Maybe they're getting prepared to move one of these younger surplus outfielder types. Beavers or a Cowser. I don't know. Maybe there's there's got to be more to this story because obviously we know what they have to do on the pitching side. So anyway, that was an interesting move. I thought that was one thing that I wanted to take a quick look at. What else? What else happened yesterday? There was so much that happened yesterday. Really quick to run through it. This trade was kind of a nothing trade. There was a couple of interesting ones though. Twins got Eric Orsi, who's a former Met teammate of mine, for a hot second. He actually did pretty good with the Rays, so now he's headed over to the Twins. JJ Bleday. Now this has been a pretty big drop off. Actually curious to look at JJ Bleday for a second, because he's got the big draft pedigree, obviously. Vanderbilt guy. I believe he was the 4th or 5th overall pick in his draft. He's now been on and off 2 different teams, Marlins and A's now. And yeah, I mean, this year was rough to say the least. He did have a 761 OPS in 2024 with 20 home runs. But yeah, man, I mean, you look at the profile, it's not a lot of walk in the profile either year. Let's see. Bat speed looks to be nothing major. I mean, this year he was bad in almost every metric except for walks. So chase rate and walks, that's a pretty good place to be, but something's up with his swing because he didn't do any damage this year whatsoever. So makes sense. The A's move on. I'm a little shocked, but I didn't realize that he struggled this much. I agree with Dan. I was shocked by some of these numbers. I really wasn't sure. So I don't know. We're going to get into the QOs in a minute, Mr. P. Just give me a sec here. They must be convinced Grayson won't make it as a starter long term. I think they must be concerned about that health factor. They feel like they're going to end up chasing it for a long time there, and they have to act now. So I guess that's the calculus on the Orioles side, but this is what's tough about not knowing anything on the inside. Like, I don't have the slightest idea about how he's been trending. You would think he'd be good after all this time off, but I also thought he was going to pitch last year. So I don't know, a lot of stuff going on with Grayson, and we'll just have to wait and see if the Angels end up being smart here, or if the Orioles kind of knew what they were doing here. We'll have to watch out. All right. So that was this, and then we had Bernardino, Brandon Bernardino, one of the dudes I really liked a lot last year when I was with the Sox in spring training. He goes to the Rockies. So Red Sox are punting this guy off their roster who's been a pretty effective member of their team the last few years. Matches up well. I think his fit at Coors is a little interesting. Hoping for a weak contact approach. Doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, which is a little bit scary. 23% strikeout rate. So DePodesta and the new Rockies brass bringing him in. Trying to buy into maybe a little bit of a matchup option there for them, but I don't know. I think I don't know. I feel a little bad for him because this is a tough challenge for him, for the kid. But he'll be in the show for sure. Just has to keep doing his thing. But I liked Bernie a lot. I liked seeing him on the Red Sox. So anyway, I just want to mention that real quick, and then we can go over the QOs. So official QO decisions came down to 4 guys took it, right? This was another Rockies one. Toglia getting designated. They gave up on him pretty quick. I mean, I guess it wasn't that quick. Sorry, I have to take a quick detour into Toglia. I mean, negative 1.7 WAR last year, hit 190 with 11. It's just that 2 years ago, he looked like he was starting to come into his own a little bit. 25 home runs. Unfortunately, comes with a 218 batting average. So the issue with this guy is he's just never going to make enough contact to tap into the power. But that's another first-round pick by the Rockies that didn't really work out. He was the 23rd overall pick of the 19 draft out of UCLA. And that did not fly very well. All right, let's keep going. Morel designated, Fraley designated. I think those are mostly money decisions by the Rays. That's typical Rays stuff. Man, where's the QO stuff? I mean, I know what 4 it was, but I'm curious to get it loaded up here. Can Steve Cohen buy those pitching protocols you were talking about? This is the big question. Like, this is maybe the next big leap forward, is keeping your guys healthy. Who's going to be the best at that? Here's that Ricky Tiedemann guy we were talking about from the Blue Jays that he could maybe impact, maybe bullpen, maybe starter, but he is indeed on the roster. So we were right to talk about him a little bit.
Do you have the hammer? You know where the hammer is?
I thought it was on the counter or something. All right, whatever. We know who the 4 QOs are. The 4 QOs are... Well, here's the 9 players that rejected. So the people that rejected are going to have it attached to them as they go through free agency this year. Kyle Tucker, that was a no-brainer. Schwarber, no-brainer. Bo Bichette, no-brainer. Framber Valdez, no-brainer. Dylan Cease, no-brainer. Ranger Suarez, probably no-brainer. Edwin Diaz, that's a no-brainer as well. And then there was Gallen and King. I think they both made the right choice. I think they're both going to be quite desired. I think they can overcome the attachment to the QO. But for the other 4, Grisham, Glaber, Woodruff, and Imanaga, they all decided to accept, probably for different reasons, I guess, for each guy. But ultimately, you look out there and you don't want to be attached to the QO. I mean, we've seen it drag down free agents that aren't at the very tippy top. And I think for the most part, these are decent decisions. Trent Grisham, I talked about it the other day. I thought made a lot of sense for him to take it. Re-up with the Yankees. I think that QO was going to really hurt his market. I think a lot of people were calling BS on his season as anything more than a fluke. And now he's got a chance to prove it again, hitting in front of Judge probably, which is a great place to be. Run it back, hit some more home runs, show that walk rate, maybe come back a little bit with maybe a little bit better defensive metrics, and now you might be looking at a multi-year deal, not encumbered by that, not bogged down by that QO next year. Gleyber Torres, yeah, I don't know what his market would have looked like either. There's not a ton of middle infielders, second baseman out there, so I don't know. This was probably a closer call, but I like him at that price. Woodruff, it just seems like him and the Brewers can't quit each other. You look at his whole career; it's all Milwaukee, and they even signed him to rehab him through his shoulder problems. Couple things along the way, but it just seems like these two are attached to the hip. And I actually thought Woodruff looked pretty good when he came back last year, and now he's got a chance to continue on right where he was. I mean, look at the peripheral numbers on Woodruff this year, and these aren't savant numbers, obviously, but 11.6 strikeouts per 9, 1.9 walks per 9, and 6.3 hits per 9 for a .912 WHIP in his return from a whole bunch of injuries. I know he got injured again, didn't pitch in the postseason, but I don't know. This is pretty cool. This is pretty cool for Woodruff to stick with the same squad and go at it again, and maybe he's got a shot to go back on the market without that next year. But I thought it's just interesting. These two guys, like the team and the player have been really attached. I mean, he's been there since 2017, not to mention his minor league days. So he's really outlasted everybody else. He's been the longest guy with the Brewers, and I think that there's something pretty cool about that. So he's sticking around. That's fine. And then Shota, which is mentioned here by Nick. Our guy Shota ends up with a $32 million year here because he gets the $10 million buyout from the Cubs. And then I like that he went and took the QO. I mean, he gets to stick where he's comfortable. His season kind of fell apart in his last dozen or so starts with the home runs last year, but there's no reason to think he can't make that a little bit better. And look, he's making $32 million this year, and now he keeps his options open. We got the lockout looming next year. If the shit hits the fan, he can go back and sign in Japan. He can be a little more flexible under this circumstance. If you're locked into, some sort of 3-year contract, which I know the Cubs could have potentially, or he could have taken, or there was some talk about another extension there. I know that he had turned down the Cubs had initially declined all their options that got him in this situation, but still, I don't know. I think this made sense for Shota a little bit. He would have been bogged down a little bit by the QO2. A lot of people would have been wondering about his declining velocity, and they would have been wondering about that home run rate for sure. So I don't know. I think it's pretty good, pretty cool. And yes, I do think that the lockout has some effect here. It's not like a huge effect, but pretty good chance there's a lockout next year. And, now you don't have to deal with that uncertainty as much. You'll be a free agent, but you don't have to worry about anything leaking into the games, when you're trying to get your big deal then, get your money now, get it figured out. I don't know. I think it's more about the market than the lockout, but that probably weighed in a little bit, probably especially with Imanaga's thinking, because Imanaga can always go back to Japan probably pretty comfortably if he wants to. So, could be true. Dano agrees. I don't know. Very it's just interesting. These offers come out every year. I mean, now you're talking big money. 22 million for the 1 year is pretty dang good. And teams are okay with it. I do wonder with the Grisham situation, and we talked a little bit about the Yankees and their needs. This changes their mix a lot in the outfield. Now I'm kind of wondering out loud, thinking out loud a little bit, and I did this yesterday a little bit on my Discord in my head, just thinking about Jason Dominguez's trade value now a little bit. They're probably going to still, go after Bellinger or Tucker. So with Spencer Jones coming, I don't know. Where's Dominguez's place on this team? Are they more likely to package a Spencer Jones now? Go big fish hunting now that they got Grisham back in the fold, and then maybe they can, maybe they do go get a Tucker or they bring back Belly, and then they have a little more flexibility to work with their young guys that they don't really need in the moment. So I don't know. And I've seen a little bit of this too. People are pissed that the Yankees even offered it because they're like, we don't really want him back at that price. Like, we need to be going after Bellinger and Tucker. What does this do for us? Like, they're ready for the shiny new toy Spencer Jones. So I kind of get it from a Yankee fan perspective, but I also think it made sense from his perspective as well. The one I was surprised by was Grisham. I think he would have gotten a 3-year deal and it overcrowds the outfield. I bet they're a Freddie Peralta trade partner with Jones Dominguez. See, now that's what I think. I think they're a trade partner now to beef up either the rotation or the bullpen with a top end guy if they want to go crazy with Dominguez, Jones, even like Chase Hampton, who just got put on the 40 man. Any of those types of prospects, they want to try to cash those in and make a bigger push. Or maybe they find out that somebody like Ketel Marte is like actually available and they want to go after a guy like that. So I don't know. In a way, it kind of opens them up to do a couple things. They're kind of forced to go in it a little bit more here. I mean, not that they don't always go in on it, but I don't know I wonder if you drugged Cashman up and put him in a room, what he would say his desired outcome was from the Trent Grisham QO situation, whether he would have liked him to take it or not liked to take it. I'd be curious to get his take on that. And I'm not saying to give up on Dominguez. I like Dominguez as a player. I'm sure they do too, but you got to give up value to get value back. So now that they have a little bit of a more crowded outfield, maybe that becomes a possibility, but certainly I don't know. I don't know how they value him and everything. So, interesting. All right, let's move it on. Let's close that down. We don't need anything on these dudes. And we don't need much on that. And let's get started with our first NL East team, which I just go in the order that Fangraphs has them listed in. So I think that's probably alphabetical or something. I don't know. But I'm going to go with the Braves first. And we'll get into this. Hold on. We got one more thing in the chat here before we get started. Adam, do teams usually offer the QO to players hoping they take it? Or do you think they usually QO players they assume will decline and hopes they get the draft pick? I think most of the time it's the latter. They assume they're going to decline and they just got to lock in that draft pick. Usually they kind of know their player's going to decline, but when it's a close call, you saw with the Red Sox, they decided not to offer it to Giolito, and I think Giolito probably had a decent shot to accept. And that's where it's like, where do you value the guy on a 1 year? Are you afraid of him accepting it or not? If you're kind of like, okay, either way, like you're good with a 1 year, but you didn't want to go multi-years with a guy, which is, I think, probably where the Yankees landed with Grisham and probably where the Tigers landed with Glaber. Like, they probably wanted those guys to reject and take the draft pick, but they're okay with the outcome. Like, if they weren't okay with it, they wouldn't make the offer. They would skirt around it like the Red Sox did with Giolito. And you see from time to time where there's a guy who's kind of on the fence and doesn't get offered it. That's when the team's not comfortable with them actually taking it. So I don't know. I think they were kind of good in either scenario, both the Tigers and the Yankees, with those two guys in particular. The Cubs one's fascinating with Imanaga a little bit because like 32 million for the 1 year now. So I mean, I know that buyout had already been kind of factored in, but I wonder what they wanted to happen there too a little bit. What else we got here? But wouldn't QO suppress the free agent value, making the likelihood of taking the QO higher? Yes, it does. It does, of course. That's the gamble you're playing. But again, like it's just risky because if they reject it, you do get that shiny draft pick that all the teams want. And if they accept it, it's just you have to weigh it out. Like, are you okay with the 1 year nature of it? You know? And I think sometimes these are really hard calls, but you don't want to be left with nothing. Like when you let a guy walk and you don't get anything for him, I think that hurts for some teams. They'd rather hang on to the asset and see what they can do with it. You know, I don't know. We'll see. Who needs a center fielder? The Tigers. If the Yankees want off Grisham so bad, they could just pay half his deal and probably get an okay prospect from the Tigers. I don't think they want to get off him. I think Grisham's going to be playing for the Yankees. I think the fact that they offer him the QO tells me that they were okay with him taking it. I think it more opens up the avenue now, though, that if you know, like, look, you go sign Cody Bellinger, Kyle Tucker, and you have Garrett Cole coming back with 3 years left on his contract. You have Aaron Judge in the prime of his career. Like, they're going all in. They're going all in right now. So part of going all in is making a valuation on some of your young guys and deciding, you know, is it worth hanging on to these guys or is it worth, you know, cashing them in for a piece that can help us win right now that we are all in? And I could see the Yankees go in that direction, quite frankly. Dominguez, Jones, you know, we love these guys, but they haven't shown it yet. So I think, I don't know, that's kind of the calculus that will be going forward. All right, let's get started. Let's get started with the National League East teams. First, we're going to hit the Braves. All right, so the Braves had a really disappointing year, 76 and 86. Nobody saw this coming. As long as I played in the NL East, you know, the Braves were the team. I mean, the Phillies, also really, really good. Obviously, the Mets, you know, I was on the Mets. We were good. But the Braves were consistent all the years I was there. They slipped a little bit in that 24 year when we had to play them on the second, on like the day after the season for those that doubleheader day. They slipped a little bit that year, no doubt. But ultimately, this is a team that has high-end talent locked up, right? So here are their free agents at the moment that they are currently set to lose. Ozuna from the Braves, Raciel Iglesias, Tyler Kinley, Cal Quantrill, Charlie Morton, Hassan Kim, Pierce Johnson. I didn't know Pierce was a free agent too. Joel Payamps, Cookie signed a minor league deal, I think, with Tigers, it looks like. Brebbia, who they got late in the season, and then Verdugo, who they got rid of pretty early, honestly. So those are all their free agents. And here is their current lineup. At the moment, Jurickson Profar, steroid user at the top. Right after him is Matt Olson, who we love. Ronald Acuna, we all know about him. Drake Baldwin, the Rookie of the Year. Austin Riley, Ozzie Albies, Sean Murphy, Michael Harris. It's a sick lineup. I have no issue with this lineup. Even Nick Allen, who can't hit a lick, is unbelievable on defense. So I kind of like their lineup. I don't hate it. I know they lost Ozuna. That's a big part of it. I could see them being in the market for something here, but it's hard to tell what. Sean Murphy. Man, on the bench. The bench is weak right now. Bruhan, speed guy. Wisely, speed guy. Siani, speed guy. Eli White, I'm pretty sure speed guy. So that's kind of weird. I don't know. Where can they really upgrade? Well, DH, because if Drake Baldwin ends up catching more, and then also shortstop. Now, for a while, they've been in this spot with shortstop. You know, they were playing Arcia for a while at short. Now it's Nick Allen. He's a big-time defender. How's Drake Baldwin behind the plate, and how's Sean Murphy? Let's go check those two guys out. All right, first let me look at Sean Murphy, because he, this guy's like an all-star type player. And then you go look at the last 2 seasons, and they've kind of both been double loss seasons. 2023, I mean, he's putting up an 843 OPS behind the plate with 21 homers, just making that lineup feel impossibly long. But then look at the last 2 years. It's under the Mendoza line both years. Last year, barely collects 300 on base. I know he had some injuries along the way, but now you got this guy Drake Baldwin in there. Now, one thing you don't want to miss out on is that defense, though. Holy cow. 94th percentile blocks, 89th caught stealings, 65 in framing, and obviously the caught stealings is good with the pop time. So I like that dynamic. Let me look at our rookie of the year, Mr. Drake Baldwin. So Drake Baldwin, 810 OPS right out the gate. Needs to be in the lineup, obviously. Defensively, really good at blocking. Could use some work on framing. This is a hell of a 1-2 punch at catcher. I think Sean Murphy is actually kind of expendable. I'd be curious to see if somebody tries to take a swing at him. If not, they can run it back, but then now you're looking at your backup catcher being DH a lot. So I think they have one offensive bullet to shoot, in my opinion. Where's my Braves? Here's my Braves. I think they have one big offensive bullet to shoot, given that they lost Ozuna. Man, they're a sneaky team. I saw them being attached a little bit to Bo, as AD Gamer is pointing out. Do I think they'd go after him? So I don't think he'd be an upgrade defensively at short. He'd be really struggling at short, and that would pull them down. I actually don't think he's a great fit. Offensively, he'd be a nice fit, but defensively, I think I'd like to have Bo at second base from here on out, personally. So I don't know how they're evaluating that. And, let's not sleep on Nick Allen's defense. I just want to show you this real quick. We don't have, we're not going to spend a lot of time on Nick Allen, but Nick Allen's defense is 99th percentile range. So that's obviously, that's something that you don't want to give up on. If you have enough offense, you'd love to have a great defender. I mean, obviously he's as good of a defender as he's that bad of a hitter, but I don't know. It's an interesting thing there. All right, let's let me get my head wrapped around their batters a little bit when I go look at the rotation. All right, Saylor, we know we're all set with that. Schwellenbach, it was so fucking good. Strider, they got to get him fixed, but he'll be in there. Waldrop came up and looked really good, and then Ronaldo Lopez, what's his deal? I know he was hurt. What's Ronaldo Lopez's deal? So he threw 20 pitches off the mound on 9/12/2025. It was a shoulder thing. He's been kind of in trouble with shoulder problems for a while. I mean, I don't follow the Braves news, but I would be surprised if he wasn't healthy and good to go next year. So the rotation's not bad at all, honestly. You got to love Sale despite his age. You got to love Schwellenbach. And Strider has got that ace potential. We all know it. It's just a matter of getting him straightened out. He was a little bit off last year. We'll take a look at him in a second. Waldrop and Lopez. All right, Waldrop. So we need to look at Waldrop and Strider real quick. Strider was just so odd to watch last year. It's actually funny. I pitched in a game in spring training at the Braves spot, and Strider was the starter for the other team, and he came out and he struck out like the first, I don't know, 5 or 6 guys of the game. He's throwing 99, and I said, well, he didn't lose anything with his surgery. And then the season came, and his fastball just wasn't the same anymore. This is not a Spencer Strider season. 4.45, only 131 strikeouts, 125 and a third. That's not very Spencer Strider-ish at all. And the results completely backed up. He's basically a 2-pitch pitcher. If you remember, this curveball here, this 9% curve that he used last year, that was a pitch that he invented, or they started working on previous spring training, and that's when he blew out his elbow. And I remember thinking to myself, man, everybody wants to invent a new pitch on the fly and then just rip it as hard as you can every spring training, and it's just sketchy. And I think that's a little bit maybe what went down with Spencer, but then again, I don't really know. Wasn't there. Anyway, I want to look at his fastball shape. All right, yeah, I mean, this is a red flag right away. So 2025, 16.4 vert on the fastball, 8.9 horizontal. That is way down. In 2024, he was at 17.3 inches of induced vertical break. So he loses almost 1 inch of induced vertical break, as well as a mile an hour of velocity from 24 to 23. And then if you go even further back to from 24 to 25, then if you go back to 23, which was when he was really cooking, and he was, I believe this was his best year, 22 and 23 especially, 18.4 inches of induced vertical break. So he's lost 2 inches of induced vertical break and about 2 miles an hour on his fastball from over the last 2 years. So that's problem number 1. for Spencer. Arm angle. And it's not hard to see why. Arm angle dropped a lot. 42 degrees. At his peak, he was at 48 degrees. So maybe the thought process there is that hiked up arm angle is not so good on the arm, but it was certainly making him a disgusting and elite fastball thrower. Yeah, 22 and 23. I mean, this guy's super duper elite. What's crazy is he still got 86% whiff last year. It's just the chase wasn't as good. The velo's starting to trend down, and I don't know who Spencer Strider is without elite velo, and I think that's the question. I do think he's smart enough and has enough feel to maybe adapt out of this, but he's too young to have to adapt out of this. I think he needs to be spending this offseason figuring out how to get that body and that arm moving in the right spot and get him back to whoever he was in 22, 23. And like 23, Spencer Strider, this is what you want to see. This is when he was getting drafted #1 in fantasy leagues. 281 strikeouts and 186 and 2/3 is stupid, throwing 2 pitches. And he absolutely owned the Mets for the most part that year. I know we got him a few times, but Strider's a big deal, getting him figured out. So, I mean, he'll be in the rotation, but that's a big need for them, 100%. And then we need Waldrop, who came on the scene last year, and a lot of people had kind of given up on this dude a little bit as a prospect, but he showed really well. 10 games, 9 starts, 2.88, 6-1, 56 1/3, 55 strikeouts, 1.19. Doesn't really get a ton of chase, but does get whiff in zone. Too many walks. Contact could be a little better, but one thing I love about him is his split. He's got a really interesting splitter. He's got a pretty good pitch mix overall. A lot of different pitches he's coming at you with, and he looked pretty good, I thought, last year. So they might have another guy at least penciled in at the beginning of spring training. So I actually don't hate the rotation. I don't think they're going to have to do too much with that. Maybe they'll look for some ancillary pieces, but I don't think it's a major overhaul in the rotation. So we're looking at a team that had a disaster season, and so far I'm saying maybe one big bat, and I'm not really convinced they need to do anything in the rotation yet. Sales, Schwellenbach, who I love, Strider, who can be fixed, Waldrop, who started to point up a little bit, and Lopez, who's been good when healthy. It's not bad. They need more depth, but overall, that's not bad. Curious. Okay, AJ Smith-Schaller. I think he had Tommy John. I don't think he'll be back anytime soon. Who are some of the pitching prospects on this club? Didier Fuentes. He got called up super young. They had to use him. Don't know about any of these other guys yet, but Braves seem to typically develop pretty well as they come up. They also have a new manager, who's my guy, Walt Weiss, who I really love, from the Rockies. He was never really given the team to win anything, so it's hard to judge him off his record with the Rockies. I thought he did a great job bringing along a lot of the young position players. You think about the position players who took the next step under Walt when I was a Rocky. Charlie Blackmon, Nolan, Story, LeMahieu. Those guys really point out, even some pitchers, the Marquezes, the Freelands, those people were all coming up in that era, and he did a nice job. So I like the fact that they kept the guy, they kept a little continuity. He's been the bench coach there for a while, but Walt's going to be a little different than what's his face? Than Snit. He's going to be a little different than Snicker. I think he's going to be a little more progressive, but it'll be the Braves, and they have all this talent. So maybe one bat. Let me think about righty-lefty. Switch lefty-righty, switch righty-lefty-righty. I don't think that matters a whole lot. Maybe a righty would make sense. The only issue is this Drake Baldwin catcher situation. If they can clear that up, then they could go for a DH. I don't know if you look to retain Ozuna or not. I think he was actually a little better than his numbers looked. Let's go look at Marcel for a second, because this guy was so good for the Braves the last few years, and I don't think a lot of people realize quite how good, like top of the scale good. I mean, look at the previous 2 years, 40 home runs and 39 home runs, 900 OPS both years. This past year, 755 OPS. He really fell off. The power numbers weren't there as much. I wonder if they know a little bit more about him. He's a little older. It would be a one-year deal if they brought him back. But I don't know. They're looking for a replacement for him, basically. They really need him, and this is also a great comment as well. They could really use a guy like Dansby right now. Um, they could. That would be great if they had more than just a defensive shortstop. Like I've said, I love Nick Allen defensively. Obviously, offensively, that's a big hole, and that's why the Braves are going to have to add one bat to their offense. And I'm not sure what direction Anthopoulos will go with that. I don't think they have a defensive issue. I think it's pretty solid overall. Um, and then, their bench, they tend to mix and match pretty good. All right, let's look at their bullpen for a second because that got ransacked by free agents. So as it currently stands, Joe Jimenez, there's so many mean nicknames, but I'm not going to say any of them. Aaron Bummer, who I've always been a fan of. I don't know how he pitched last year, but got good stuff. Dylan Lee is the unsung hero of the Braves bullpen for a few years now. Grant Holmes would be a long guy, and then I don't know really the rest of these dudes. These are 4A type guys. I know Daysbel Hernandez has a good arm. Dylan Dodd, Jose Suarez was like a long guy. So they need to do some work in the bullpen. I think they're going to have to they probably need a real closer. It stinks that they're losing Pierce Johnson too. I didn't realize that. So I expect them to make a couple moves in the bullpen and maybe one lesser starter move. I kind of like, call me crazy, but I kind of like Chris Bassett on this team. I know Blue Jays fans won't love that, but I kind of like Chris Bassett on this team as a veteran in the rotation, kind of covering for some of their injury issues. You're going to get innings out of him. He's from North Carolina, probably has some Braves fandom in his blood a little bit. And then from the bullpen, I need them to get one of these dudes, one of these closer types. So let's go look at the free agent tracker real quick, and let's go peek at the relief pitchers once again. I don't think they're gonna play for Edwin. If they did, that would be amazing. That would be sneaky. Suarez, maybe too much contact for that ballpark. Everybody should be in on Devin. Tyler Rogers could be a good fit. Even Finnegan, maybe. I don't know. Maybe not enough swing and miss. I could see Fairbanks. Kinley did a good job when he was over there, but I don't know. I could see them doing something. If the Braves side Edwin Diaz, you never hear from me again. I know. I mean, it would be mean, but you got to remember, Hef's over there now. Man, a lot of people not happy with that thought. And I wouldn't be happy with it either, being a Met enjoyer myself. But yeah, I mean, I could see them. Anthopoulos is aggressive. So I don't know. Pierce Johnson, Helsley. This could be a Helsley spot. I could see Helsley being in this spot for the Braves. That kind of tracks. I like Helsley for the Braves or even for the Phillies a little bit. It tracks. So they're going to need a couple of those. Let me get back to that bullpen again. I don't mind their it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter righty or lefty because I already think they have decent lefties. Bummer and Dylan Lee are pretty good. Let me see what type of years those guys had last year. Bummer had a 3.81. He's never going to look good from expected ERA because he's just not a strikeout pitcher. It's all pretty much grounders and hard grounders at that. But look at that. 94th percentile ground ball rate, 99th percentile barrel rate. That's why he's on the club. And then my guy that I really love is Dylan Lee, who's been unbelievable for the Braves. 74 games last year, 68 in a third, 76 punches, sub 1 whip. Previous year, 2.11, where he was throwing more multi-inning role. This guy's been an absolute find for them. A 10th rounder drafted by the Marlins that they picked up, and he's been an absolute dog for them the last few years through his upper 20s into his 30s. I mean, you see the numbers. He's been tremendous. So, yeah, I like Bummer and Lee. I got no problem with either of those. Maybe one lower-end starter. I got to be an innings guy. So I could see a veteran being in play there. I know they brought back Chuck Morton at the end of the year. I think he's done, though. But, I could see a Bassett. I don't know about Schurz, but they'll have a lot of options. They'll have some options down there at the bottom of the rotation. And then they definitely need to get, at least 2 relievers, 1 high end in my mind. And then, like I said, they have 1 bullet to shoot offensively. All right, free agent tracker. Let's just do all batters by projected WAR. Who fits this squad? I mean, Ha-Seong Kim? but they just had him. I mean, it's got to be like a DH type. So, I mean, I don't think they're going to come in and swoop in for Schwarber. That would be the super move. And I don't love their fit for Bichette, given his lack of shortstop defensibility, because you can't move Ozzy off second. So, I don't know. I'm looking for a bat here, just a bat. I don't know, maybe a Ryan O'Hearn. They'll get somebody. I mean, I don't know who. It's just crazy the amount of names, major league players that are on this list that, you get into page 2, Conforto's on page 2. He had a bad year, but he's still a guy that's like going to get a major league deal, Yeah, probably nobody on page 2. All right. That's the Braves. I think they have one bullet to shoot offensively. They need one bat. I think starting they're fine, but maybe somebody at the bottom end. And then I think they need a high-end reliever. I think that's where they're at, and I think they run it back. I don't think you worry too much about their standings from last year. You just kind of run it back. You believe in the talent. Acuna is a big deal. He only played about, I don't know, what was it, 40% of the season. He's still unbelievable. So I think you're okay if you're the Braves, just kind of running it back with a couple moves and seeing where that takes you. Braves fans have hopes for Alek Manoah in the bullpen. That's a project. So that'd be interesting to see. Man, everybody hates Diaz going to the Braves. Oh, man. How much does the childhood team make a player mean to a player when picking a place to play? I think it's a factor. I don't think it's everything, but I think it helps. I know for me, at least, like when I had the Yankees interested in me after my Rockies, when I finished up with the Rockies and I was a free agent that year, it was pretty hard to ignore how badly I wanted to be a part of that team in that moment. It was pretty hard to ignore, although I probably could have ignored it if the deal was much better somewhere else. But I don't know. Cam Caminiti's a big prospect for them, too. I'd be curious to see how quickly he can move. He's only an A-ball and he's young, but he's a big prospect for them as well. I wanted to point out. I don't really understand the Bader idea. Where's Bader going to play on this squad? He's not a better outfield. He's a great outfielder. He's not a better outfielder than Michael Harris. So he can't play center. Left field, Profar is pretty much in there. He's a switch hitter, and then right field's Acuna. I guess he could be a bench guy, but he's looking to play every day. So I don't think Bader. Ooh, Murakami is an interesting option. I could see it. I'd be curious what Anthopoulos' read on Murakami is. So it's like an Ozuna, Murakami, big-time bat. I don't really care much about the position situation. And then maybe they have a move to make with Murphy if they want to switch him out and have Drake Baldwin as the actual catcher all the time. So, yeah, I still feel good about the Braves. I'm not as scared of them as I used to be because they have some issues. They don't have quite the same, monstrous rotation that they had at one point when there was, Max Fried in there and Strider was at the top of his game and stuff like that, but it's pretty dang good. It's pretty dang good anyway, so I don't know. Braves are probably going to be a factor. I would not be surprised. All right, on to the Miami Marlins. They're our next team on the list. Now, Peter Bendix, who came over from the Rays, who's now in charge of their team, he's been talking about how the Marlins are going to be a little more aggressive in the spending market this year, which is interesting. Marlins are a sneaky competitive team always. And I actually think they made the right decision. I loved Kim Ning, and I loved what they had going on with her and Skip as the manager, and I think that was a great major league part of their situation. But in terms of building up their team, they do kind of have to lean into their Tampa Bay Rays-ish type style, mix and match. And that's what Peter Bendix is there to do. Also, now Gabe Kapler's doing some wild shit in their play development realm, and they're calling pitches from the dugout. So there's a lot of things I hate. But there's no denying that this team is annoying to play always, and they always seem to have something coming. All right, offensively, they've pretty much stunk for as long as I can remember now. Offensively, this is always the issue: is who can hit in this ballpark, who can they get that can hit in this ballpark. It's been a while since they had some scary guys on offense. This is where in the NL East you would go to pretty much get your zeros polished up and try to get in as many innings as you can versus the Marlins, and then move on. Keep that ERA nice and low. So this is what they're working with right now. If it were to start today, the top four, actually pretty decent. Jacob Marcy had a good year. Xavier Edwards is a tough out. Kyle Stowers has one of the best combinations of bat speed and swing length that you'll find in the big leagues. And before he got hurt, he was outstanding last year. Agustin Ramirez looked really, really good. They got him from the Yankees in a trade. He has no real position, but he comes for blood when he's swinging the bat. Then they got this crew right here: Griffin Conine, Liam Hicks, Otto Lopez, Graham Pauley, Connor Norby. Now, Norby was supposed to be the big piece in that Rogers deal when Rogers went back to the Orioles for Connor Norby. To this point, he hasn't done a whole lot. Javier Sanoa, Eric Wagaman, Heriberto Hernandez, Dane Myers. Like, there's just no names. There's just no names in the offensive attack of the Marlins. And yes, not one single draft pick of their own has creeped into this. Trade, Rule 5, waivers, trade, amateur free agent, so that's their own signing, Javier Sanoa, and then free agent, and a Rule 5er, Dane Myers. So that's pretty incredible looking at the Marlins. Here are their prospects. Thomas White is the big-time left-handed pitcher that's coming. Thomas White, Massachusetts guy, actually, but he's one of the bigger prospects in the game. I feel that's a good asset to have. Joe Mack. Who is Joe Mack? Joe Mack is a hitter who last year kind of... had almost 800 OPS in the minors last year, went through AA, AAA, hit 21 homers. Oh, that's 2024. This is 2025. Actually, was even better in 2025. About the same. A little bit better by OPS, but okay. Joe Mack, what position does this guy play? Do we have any information on this? This is a catcher. Interesting. All right, so a catcher who hits, this guy will impact their club for sure. That's nice. Noblemeyer was one of their big picks. Andrew Salas? No, that's not the same Andrew Salas. All right, so that's the hitters. I mean, look, they can improve in any kind of way. I don't know how they're going to do it. They don't typically spend. But offensively, they have a long way to go. It's actually amazing as good a record as they had, considering that this is the offense they're rolling out there in the NL East. This is not a typical NL East offense. All right, let's look at their pitching. So the top two guys are, allegedly on the trading block. Sandy Alcantara, Edward Cabrera, both nasty. Both guys that the other teams should want. Cabrera's still got some more control under him. He's only got 3 years, 147 days of service, so he's around a little bit. Sandy, I'd be surprised if he doesn't get traded pretty soon. They're going to have to cash in on that a little bit. But below that, I like the next three. Yuri Perez, Ryan Weathers, Braxton Garrett. They always seem to have pitching. They just always seem to have pitching. We mentioned Thomas White. He'll be there pretty soon. So more than likely, a couple of these guys will go traded as they're not really in a win now mode, but they're getting close to hopefully feeling good about themselves. And then, they never spend on their bullpen. I saw them linked to a couple high-end relievers at the beginning of this offseason, Devin Williams, and maybe they do make a run at having that one closer. But they actually found some success with some of these dudes at the end of the year. Foucher's got a really good cutter. Enriquez looked electric. Tyler Phillips was punching himself in the face being the closer. Bender's nasty. Nardi's pretty good. Jansen Junk, who's the long relief, might get some starts. Let me look at Jansen Junk for a second because he had an interesting year where I think he led the whole league in walk rate. Yeah, look at that. 99th percentile walk rate, Jansen Junk. So, I don't know. Interesting guy. He made 16 starts last year, so maybe they have a little bit more. Jansen Junk, the driveline legend. Maybe they have a little bit more depth in rotation than we realize, but it could get stripped away pretty quickly, and it'll look a lot thinner if they trade Sandy and Edward Cabrera. Now, I will say, playing the Marlins, even when we were kicking their butt, like in terms of the standings, was never fun. I mean, at one point, you'd go down there, you'd be expected to win the series, and you'd get Sandy, you'd get Luzardo, you'd get Pablo Lopez. You were never not getting a good starter, and it feels like that's still the case for the Marlins. So, I don't know. They're a little closer than maybe people realize, but I think that offense is the biggest issue with the Marlins. So, look, I don't know what they're going to do. They don't typically spend. If they spend it all, I would expect it to be on offense. They could really use a big time bat, whether it be a first, like something in the corners, corner outfielder, corner infielder, something like that, something that profiles in that way. but I just don't expect them to do much, so it's hard to project them, you know? And that's kind of all I got on the Marlins. I mean, you know, again, I can't, it's hard to pick out individual players to go there because you just don't know what their budget's going to be or what they're actually going to, you just can't expect them to outlay, you know, to put any money out there. All right, what else we got here? Speaking of the Marlins system, have you gotten a look at Carson Milbrandt? Nope, but we'll do a Google. We'll do a Google, and I'll find out a little bit about this guy. Carson Milbrandt, baseball. What do we got? Let's look at his reference first. Third rounder out of Liberty High School, Liberty, Missouri. Pitcher he's in the fall league. 21 years old, already been to Double-A and shoved in Double-A with 2 starts. Overall, had good numbers this year. So I'm assuming this guy's coming up the charts a little bit here, would be my guess. This is his season overall. 22 starts with a 3.3, 90 innings, 113 strikeouts. Probably a few too many walks, but he looks like he's really hard to hit. So, I don't know. Marlins always seem to have dudes coming up, so that's for sure. All right, that's it for Carson Milbrandt. And I think that's it for the Marlins. If they don't spend, they might get a grievance from MLBPA only paying one guy about $4 million this year, and if they trade Sandy, $0. That's why I think they're kind of going to have to spend a little bit. We saw that with a few people last year, right? There was a couple teams that were kind of like Oakland. Well, I guess Sacramento. They went and got Sevy. They went and made a couple moves. They kind of had no choice. Kind of had to buy in, right? So I don't know. Devin Williams, landing Devin Williams would be hilarious. I will say this: players, there's a certain type of player, and actually there's a couple different types of players that would love to play for the Marlins. A lot of people live in Florida. You got the no tax. You know, the Miami lifestyle. You know, high rises for days. You're going to get a luxury apartment. It's going to be easy. You're going to have a lot of food, awesome restaurants, nightlife. Family's going to want to come visit. Off days, you know, you got the beach and everything like that. I will say the travel kind of sucks for Miami. You're kind of far away from the rest of the league, but you know, that no state income tax, and having a lot of people that are from Florida, in a way, I mean, I think if they would spend, they could have a little bit of a squad. Devin Williams would be interesting. I mean, they'd have to pay a lot to probably convince him to go over there. But they say they're in the market, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Stuff plus grading on Carson Milbrandt. I'm assuming there's another comment coming in, and we'll put that up when we see it. I bet they spend to avoid the grievance. Yeah, Spotrac Marlins payroll. Okay. I don't really use a lot of Spotrac, but we can do that. Spotrac Marlins projected. Wow. With the tax, $63 million. Projected tax space, $180 million. I'll believe it when I see it, man. I feel like they're gonna have to do a little something, but yeah, you look at the only people that are making over $1 million. There's 7 of them: Max Meyer, Braxton Garrett, Calvin Foucher, Anthony Bender, Ryan Weathers, Edward Cabrera, and Sandy. That's it. Fascinating. You think that's why the Pirates are spending? I think the Pirates, it's a little bit of a different scenario because they have the Skeens elephant in the room as well as Connor Griffin. They need to tie it together, tie those two eras together, or else they're really just going to let this go by. And I think if you have already made an organization decision not to trade Skeens, because this would be the moment. You're going to get the most for him right now. He's only got 2 years in, so he's got 4 years of control. Just won the Cy Young. This would be the moment. But it looks like they want to win before they trade him. So if that's the case, then this is their opportunity. They have to go in a little bit. Is the ballpark nice as a player? It's talking about the Marlins. All right, listen, I might be in the extreme minority here. Call me crazy. But I kind of like it. I don't have a great reason for you. I used to like it more the other way. I used to like it the David Sampson way. I know that that's a crazy thing to say, but me personally, I like the lime green walls and I like the sculpture, the home run sculpture. You know, I thought it was very Miami, and that's what it's all about. I love their clubhouse. I love their clubhouse guys, their attendance. It's a good place to play. The turf kind of sucks. The bullpen kind of sucks. You know, the lack of crowd sucks. Although when you're on a New York team, you tend to get a good crowd. You get a great Mets crowd if you're there as a Met. So I don't know. I liked it, and Mitch agrees with me. They took all the character out of the park. Derek Jeter was anti-character. And in my opinion, he screwed it up. You know, I'm a big Derek Jeter guy, but I think he screwed it up a little bit. The soul of the Marlins was ripped away when they got rid of those lime green walls and that sculpture and the fish tank. The fish tank, they still have all the machinery. All the machinery's right there by the visiting dugout. And it's just collecting dust. They used to have real fish swimming around there in the backstop, which, yeah, it's weird, but it's Miami. And if it's weird because it's Miami. So Mitch sees it, he gets it, and I kind of ended up liking that park, to be honest with you. All right. Not when I was there. No upper deck and like 5,000 people there against the Mets. Yeah, I mean, it's still not a lot, but they're all Mets fans. So you feel it a little bit. Yeah, the upper deck's not open unless it's like WBC. Although I will say, I played in one of the most electric games of my career in this ballpark in WBC versus Venezuela a couple years ago. So when it's actually packed out, it's sick. It's sick. It's just that it's usually sad. It's usually just sad most of the time when there's nobody there. You go play there with the Rockies. You want to talk about sad. You can hear people's conversations when you're out there. So that's sad. But I don't know. I've always had a lot of love for the Marlins in a weird way. Yeah. Let's see here. Florida Marlins had the best branding. I love the old Florida with the teal. They should bring that back. I don't know. I think they've made a few mistakes. You know what I mean? I feel like they made a few mistakes along the way. There we go. Yeah, I mean, I get why people don't like it, but I kind of like it. So that's my opinion. All right, we're moving on from the Marlins. Again, we have no freaking idea what they're going to do. I don't think they're really a threat to be in first place, but I think they're on the upward trajectory with their strategies, maybe at least. So we'll go ahead and we'll get rid of the Marlins, and now we are on to the Metros. All right, we're on to the Metropolitans. This is probably most of the people in the chat, what they've been waiting for, what they've been thinking about for a while, and this is a very, very tricky offseason for the Mets. I will be the first person to say that. This is a tough spot to be in for Stearns and for Uncle Steve. There's just tough decisions. There's emotional decisions to be made. They've spent a crap load of money the last few years. They didn't make the playoffs last year. There's no time to reset things. You got to push forward. You got to make tough choices here. And this is where it begins. So 83 and 79, they missed the playoffs by one game, as we all know. Here are the current free agents. Pete and Edwin are the big two. Everybody knows that. Cedric Mullins, he will definitely not be coming back to the Mets. Tyler Rogers, I mean, I could see that as a fit if he wants it. Canning, unfortunately, I don't know when he's coming back from his Achilles. That's a brutal injury. Soto was there. Starling Marte, who had been a Met for 4 years. He's back on the market. Helsley, no way he's coming back. Stanek, probably not coming back. Man, Janko was there. Who knew? He's a coach now, I believe, on the Rangers. Winker, man, I don't know what happened to Winker. That was crazy. They brought back Dick Lovelady. And then Madrigal, who really never had a spot on the team. And then Drew Smith, they ended up not bringing back either, which I thought was a little odd. But that's a huge list. That's a huge list of players that have been ejected off this roster at the moment. Here are the top prospects. So it's Sproat ranked ahead of Tong, interestingly, and McLean. That's BS. And then Benj, who's probably the most interesting position player prospect they have by far. Jet Williams is also pretty interesting, but Benj has looked great since he's been in. And I think Stearns said he's going to have a shot to win the center field job, and I love that. I love the aggressiveness. Now, Blade Tidwell, who came up, and we saw him pitch a little bit, I was not impressed with at all. Like, at all. So, I don't know. Ronnie Mauricio, Luis Angel Acuna, who we know are kind of on the fringes of the roster. Like, they're there, trying to figure out where they all fit in. All right, here's the lineup right now. Paco in the leadoff spot with Nimmo. Soto, Vientos, Beatty, Alvey, McNeil, Mauricio, and Taylor. Honestly, it's crazy to look at that because even without Pete, it's a pretty good lineup. Oh, yeah, Tidwell got traded. Good call. Tidwell got traded. That's right. He got traded in that Rogers trade, right? I thought that was a good move. He just did not look to me ready at all. Anyway, this is the current situation. I don't know. You're looking at this roster offensively, and you're thinking about bringing Pete back, right? Pete's the big elephant in the room. Obviously, he slots right back in at first. Probably plays a little DH moving forward if that's the agreement. It would be a big bat to lose. But you look at the ages of the players and a little bit of the main guys and how they're going to age kind of at the same time. Lindor's 32. Nimmo's half a year ahead of him. Pete is shit. How old's Pete now? Pete's 30. So all three of those guys are around the same age, which means it would be good for a little while, but you're going to start running into age-related problems in about 3 years. Soto's still young, so he's great. Now, Vientos and Beatty, it's like that still hasn't been settled yet, you know? Beatty kind of got the upper hand last year. Vientos had by far the upper hand the year before. I think Vientos is probably going to have to come off third. Now they're talking about trading McNeil. Man, this is such a tough offensive team to attack. Of course, Pete, you got to get him back for the presence in that lineup. But what's the spend going to have to be? I floated like a 4 for 120 in my mind. I thought that was fair, but you know, Naylor just got the 5 years. I have no idea what Pete's market will actually end up being, but I think that's a big deal. All right, what do we got in the chat here before I keep going here? Williams and Tong / Sproat will get traded for Scooble. Nimmo and McNeil probably getting traded. Pete comes back. Vientos traded. That's a lot of moves. Don't know if they'll do all of that. Feel like Stearns will trade Senga. I hope he doesn't sell low on him. We had a lot of conversation in my Discord about Senga yesterday. On paper, it doesn't make sense to really trade Senga. He's got big time upside. We'll get into the starters in a second, but there's some other things probably straining that relationship that could lead to that. Murakami to the Mets odds. Don't think that they're in the market for him at all. Don't think so. Doesn't make much sense based on the defensive profile, which I know Stearns cares about. Pete, sneaky young. That is true. Yeah, and this is what I was saying about Murakami. Mets are not going to be in on Murakami. There's just no way Stearns is going to sign off on that. And it says Frankie feels like he's been in the majors for 15 years, and he almost has. That's how long and how young he got in. That's what super duper stars get in. They get in at like 2021, and they feel like they are literally in the big leagues forever. All right. All right, so Pete's the big elephant in the room. You get Pete back, you slap him right back in at first base, and you continue to shuffle around this. I don't think you need to do too much more. Now, if they do end up trading Nimmo or McNeil, like, what are you trying to get back? You know, is this an effort to open up a spot for Benj? You know, then Benj can play center, and you can shift some defensive guys around. I mean, they'd like to have elite defenders in center and left to cover for Soto. I think that's a big part of it as well. All right, who's on the bench? Currently, they have Terens. So Terens and Alvarez are locked in. I don't see that changing right now. Acuna, you know, he's kind of what he is. He's a backup infielder, defensive infielder, base running guy. We'll see how that progresses. I don't think he has any huge trade value. Certainly not what he had when they got Scherzer for him from Texas. Jared Young will likely not be on the team, and Ji-Hwan Bae, I mean, maybe not. I mentioned some of the prospects. The big ones are Benj and Jet Williams, right? Those are the big two, and then also Ryan Clifford. Let's go look at what Benj did through the so annoying. See what Benj did through the minors this year. This guy was a two-way guy at Oklahoma. So kind of like, I love these two-way guys. They just have so much feel for the game because they've seen it on both sides. All right, this is what he did. He went literally from high A to triple A. And he banged every level except for AAA, where he only got 90 at-bats, kind of scuffled. So he'll likely go back there, but I know Stearns is giving him a shot to make the team. Here are the final numbers when totaled up. 73 RBIs, 15 homers, 7 triples, which is interesting. 68 walks, only 92 strikeouts. That bodes well. 281 average, 385 on base, 472 slug. I think he's kind of a five-tool guy. Good arm, good speed, good contact. This is going to be an exciting guy for the Mets. Be curious to see what he looks like in spring and if he can force his way up there. You do see that he pitched as well at Oklahoma State. Look at this. Look at this last year at Oklahoma State. 3-2, 3.16 with more than a strikeout per inning. Actually, good walk rate. So, he's got a good arm. He's a really good all-around player, considering he was also a pitcher. But he's looked good. It's just these AAA numbers were a big drop-off. When he got to AAA, he only hit 178 with a 583 OPS. Granted, it was only in 24 games, but that's the first level he struggled at. But the fact that they're giving him a shot tells you that, he must be grading out pretty well, especially defensively. Stearns wouldn't rush him if he wasn't going to be a positive defensively. Only 22 years old at the time of this. Now, Jet Williams. Now, I got to meet Jet Williams a few times, obviously, being that I was there in spring training with the Mets, the first couple of spring trainings of Jet Williams. How come I can't get them to click? How did Jet play this year? Definitely, this guy's it reminded me of a little bit of a Pedroia type with a little bit more natural athleticism. Actually not the shredded body you would expect from this profile. It is that body in reality. I saw his jump testing and all of his measurements in the weight room, and they're all exceptional, unbelievable explosive power. But when you look at his body, you're like, that's the body. It just looks kind of dumpy for a little guy. But it doesn't matter. The athleticism's under there. It's under that skin. You don't realize it. He's got it, and he plays with a little bit of an edge. He's also tough to pitch to. He's got a little small strike zone. He's got a very, very quick little swing. Hit 17 dingers last year between AA and AAA, so there's pop in there despite his size. 76 walks, 131 strikeouts, had an 828 OPS, so you got to be excited about him. I don't have a lot of information about his defense. I think that's going to be key moving forward. But if they're looking to move McNeil out of there's probably some opportunity at second base coming pretty soon for a guy like Jet Williams if he can force his way up there. All right, those are the two guys. I know Ryan Clifford's another guy. I know he's kind of fallen off a little bit, but he's a power prospect. Mauricio is another one. It's man, he hits the ball hard. Where's his position? Is there too much swing and miss? The Mets have a lot of that going on with their young hitters. So yeah, I think there's a lot of moving parts here. Given how active they've been in the trade talks already, I'd be curious to see how that shakes out if they do end up, moving Jeff, and I'd be really shocked if they move Nimmo. But if they do, that's going to open them up to do some other things for sure. And, Pete's the big elephant in the room offensively. I just don't see them stretching. It would have to be a situation where either the market comes back to the Mets where it's agreeable, or Pete's good with a 3 or 4 year term. I just don't see them offering more than that. I don't have any inside information. But I just, you see the way they played it last year. I don't think they're going to do it any differently. I think they're going to wait out the market again. So that's what I think their approach is on Pete. And honestly, the offense is still pretty solid even without him. They're going to make some move. I think Bellinger would be a great replacement. There's some others, but they're not going to know what they're going to do until they figure out what happens with Pete Alonso for sure. And I think that could drag down their offseason a little bit offensively, and that's maybe why they're in the trade market right now a little more than thinking about the signing market because they need to wait that out. I think ultimately that's going to be their strategy, is to wait him out. All right, to the rotation. All right, Nolan McLean, we freaking love this guy. I think he definitely deserves to be the ace. He is the ace. He's nasty. He came up. He showed a lot, considering it's only half a year, or even less than half a year. I'm a huge Nolan McLean believer. I have many videos breaking down his stuff, his debut, and really all of his starts almost we watched on this program, and he didn't disappoint in any of them. He was nasty in all of them, so I love Nolan McLean. Peterson started to show his cracks big time in the second half. I think you're still comfortable with him. to go out there and give you some innings. I don't think you're comfortable with him being your number 2. I think that's a little bit scary. Manaya, it's all about health with Sean. He never got healthy last year. I think that's a big deal is Manaya. Get him healthy. And they are really counting on that. I don't think they can possibly go into this next year with Sean being on the fritz. If Sean's on the fritz and not a little bit closer to his 2024 numbers, somewhere in between, high 3 ERA, low 4, making all his starts, then this Mets season is going to be in trouble right at the onset, and they're going to be asking a lot of these young starters. Like a lot. Just not a good year from Sean. Just struggled big time. Velocity wasn't great. Not that it had trended up for a few years, started trending back down. The 6% changeup usage, something was up with the elbow. We looked at it a little bit, last year. The pitch mix just changed a little bit on Sean, and I think it was all health related. You see all the different stuff he had in his game in 2024, which was the year that got him the contract, and the year that really put him on the radar, as a great Met. And then he just reduced the mix. Like, he's always had at least 4 or 5 pitches in his mix, and then you go look at this year that just happened, and it's 60% four seam, 34% sweeper, 6% changeup. So that just didn't make sense to me. And man, I would want him to be in St. Lucie or something. You'd be figuring it out literally the whole offseason what to do with Sean, because they cannot win without him being healthy. This year, Clay Holmes, hopefully, he survived that workload pretty well that first year. I know he got tired at the end, and I think he's fine being like a number 3, number 4 guy. I think you run that back, knowing that you still have the bullpen possibility for him in a while, if need be. And then there's the other big elephant in the room, which is Senga. Obviously, they're trying to trade him. I think that's a little nutty because he still has value. But I mentioned a little bit, when talking to some people in my Discord, that one of the issues they have with Senga is that he's been driving a lot of his rehabs, and there's been a lot of poor communication over his rehab protocols, as well as when he feels like he's ready to go out there and pitch. He's very internally focused on mechanics to the point where he goes through stretches where it's just not the same out there because he's too focused internally and he's not competing the same way. If you get him out of inside his body and you get him focused down range, I still think he's got the best stuff on the Mets outside of McLean. So I'd be afraid to lose out on that upside. Even with the crappy year he had last year in terms of how it finished and the injury in the middle, still had a 3.02 in 22 starts. I know it's a 1.31 whip. It wasn't the cleanest. Too many walks, obviously. Like, there's a lot of fundamentals that are off, but the stuff doesn't lie. The stuff doesn't lie, and I think you'd be selling low on him. So I'd be surprised unless they can get something that they want back, but they have a lot of work to do in the rotation. Montas was a fucking disaster. That signing, so they have already gotten rid of that. He got designated for assignment right here and punted away. That's Frankie right there. So, that's a disaster. Now, there's also Sproat and Tong. Sproat and Tong are definitely going to factor into this rotation, so they have a lot more depth there than it seems. I think they could use a top of the rotation guy. For me, that would be the upgrade in the rotation. Do you go all out for a Skubal trade? Do you look to sign like a Michael King? Do you look to go for Imai? Imai would be a great fit here. But they cannot sign a mid-level dude here. They need to actually and I know Stearns doesn't like to, but in my mind, they need to go after one of the bigger guys, whether it's in a trade or whether it's signing. That would, to me, be great. Because if you can go whoever the ace is with McLean, Peterson, Holmes, and Manaya, with also having Tong and Sproat, continuing to get their, get as being part of that depth and coming up when it makes sense, I think that would help a lot. So yeah, I think they have some maneuverability here. And it's nice that they were able to get three prospects to kind of go to the big leagues at the same time. Of those 3, I'm curious what you guys thought about those 3. I've been pretty steadfast that I think McLean is way out in front of those 3, and I have Tong and Sproat graded differently. I have, for me, Tong. I'll go back to the main screen. We'll look at them for a second. For me, Tong has some qualities that are like outlier qualities in terms of pitch shape. But he just doesn't pitch yet. He's just throwing it kind of down the middle. And I think he's got a lot of adjustments to make at the big league level. But just on a very basic level, the 4-seam fastball 19.8 induced vertical break. That's going to be right at the very, very tippy top of all major leaguers. So he's got an exceptional four-seam shape, and velocity is plenty good. He averaged 95.2 on that with a weird arm angle. We know about the Vulcan changeup pitch that he has, which I believe he holds something like this. And that kind of tumbles out slow. It's like a Savage pitch, but he doesn't use his body the same way as the Savage, so he doesn't create the same downward plane. It's all really designed to create upward plane out of his extension. So I like him as a prospect, but I think he's just got, like, he kind of got rushed up there, and he's got a lot more to learn. He's got to figure out how to command his pitches. And then also you look at his pitch plot. It'd be nice if he could get something that went left a little bit more than what he's got going on right now. You know, he's got this slow curve, but he could really benefit from a medium speed pitch that goes left. So that's kind of my thoughts on Tong. And then Sproat. You know, Sproat, we heard a lot about him when I was over there. He was a big-time prospect when he got, drafted because he throws so hard, although the velocity definitely wasn't quite the same when he got called up last year. He did average 95.7, but this was a 100-mile-an-hour type of guy that we heard about coming up. Now, his profile turns out, by the time he gets to the big leagues, it's a little bit more of a contact profile. He's a sinker guy, basically. He's got a big mix, actually a very similar mix to McLean, except doesn't have the spin rate. So it's a lot more of a contact approach. I think he's a little more ready right now to go out there and compete in the rotation and get some results, but I think his ceiling is lower than Tong. So ultimately, this is a higher floor, lower ceiling than Tong, and I don't really know how this ends up. But I think they'd like to keep him in AAA to start the year and continue to work on his stuff and kind of continue his development. And then we'll kind of see how it goes. Where's his values from last year? Yeah, he ended up with negatives on his sinker, negatives on his curveball, positives on the other pitches. It's just his lack of spin rate makes his breaking ball not as nasty. Like, it doesn't have as much, like, snap to it. You know, you look at the whiff percentage. 15.1% whiff percentage is a little bit of a red flag for a guy who throws this hard. And as a prospect, you would think, if anything, that number would be a little higher. So, the results were fine, but it's not going to be a big strikeout approach. It's going to be a contact approach. So, I don't know. Sproat's an intriguing guy, but I would pump the brakes on him being a future ace. And I'd put Tong's ceiling above him, and I don't think he's anywhere near McLean. So it's going to be interesting to see how he develops. He could be a very useful pitcher, but I think he's going to end up being more of a back of the rotation guy if he gets in there. If not, maybe his velocity ticks up a little more out of the bullpen, and you can use him in that regard. All right, we have so much in the chat right here because this is obviously a lot of Met talk. Nolan was clearly better last year. I view him as a rotation lock, whereas the others I think should be in the minors to start the year. They were up earlier than they could. Totally agree with you. Halego man. I love your little Luigi emoji there. Sproat looked great, he says, in the eye test. His defense really let him down. He's going to have his defense not let him down all the time because he's not going to be striking guys out. Ultimately, that's Brandon Sproat's issue. Just not a strikeout pitcher. What else we got? P says he's still ranked Tong higher than Sproat. I agree, just because you got to go by ceiling when you're ranking these guys a little bit. I love Amai's quote. I want to come to MLB to strike out Ohtani and be the best pitcher like Yamamoto. I think Amai has, man, all the makings of a really good import, and I would be very excited to see him come to New York and especially the Mets, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I think they'll go after him for sure. Like I mentioned, I think they would love to have a true number one or number two type to pair with McLean and the rest of their dudes and hope that Manaea comes back to form. I think that would be the opening day thing. Everybody keeps pumping this. There's no way Jake said he would waive his no trade clause for the Mets. I'm going to pump the brakes on that right now. Jake's not coming back to the Mets. Sorry, guys. He never really wanted to be here in the first place. He enjoyed it while he was here, and he learned to like it, but he's just not a New York person. Ultimately, Jake wants a place where there's no attention. So I'd be stunned if he came back to the Mets. And you guys can make fun of me if I'm wrong. All right, let's see else. How do you heal from loose bodies in the elbow? So this is a little bit of a nervous moment. This applies to Manaea and to actually Carlos Rodon on the Yankees side. First of all, a lot of times bone spurs and loose bodies kind of happen because when you're when a part of your body's under immense level of stress, physical stress, sometimes there's calcifications that go on. That's your body's natural way of trying to reinforce that area. Not a very good thing when you're trying to move your elbow through a joint to have all this extra bone growing. But a lot of times, parts of it will kind of chip off and you'll get these loose bodies. And depending on where that little piece of bone is rattling around, it'll hurt or it won't hurt. So a lot of times they go in there to shave that down or to get rid of those loose bodies. The issue is, oftentimes when they do that, it kind of backfires and it leads to Tommy John later down the line. So most of the time they try to avoid going on their elbow if they can, but oftentimes there's no real way around it. Like you can't pitch with like loose bodies. And if you watch Mania pitch a little bit last year, I noticed he couldn't really extend on his take back. Like he would bring his elbow out and it'd only get to about here, whereas the previous year he was able to extend a little bit further. So to me, that's what it's kind of that's what's kind of the issue when you have loose bodies is you can't really get a comfortable elbow position. So it's a little bit of a sketchy situation. I mean, sometimes you see it have no problem. The guy comes back, they pitch great, but sometimes it leads to something worse. So that's a little bit of the information on that. What else we got here? Yeah, and this is, I think, this is the other part of the Skubal trade. Like, it seems great. Oh, we'll just go grab Tarek Skubal, but to win that trade, you're going to have to overwhelm them. Like, you're going to have to give them, maybe Nolan McLean, maybe Carson Bench, maybe a combination of people. I don't know what Detroit will be in the mix for him, but yeah, the haul is going to be big, and I think that's the biggest thing. So. Anyway, yeah, the DeGrom stuff, I know I poured water on that. I just don't see it. I just don't see it personally. I mean, it'd be cool. It'd be a cool story for Mets fans, certainly. But I just don't see it. All right, let's keep going on the Mets here. So that's the rotation. Look, they have, this is why it's such a tough offseason. They have a lot of things in place that you could believe in, but you could also completely pivot. They've been building up this farm system. It's finally starting to show a little bit of the fruits of their labor, and now they can go ahead and ship that all out if they want to, or they can stick with it. I mean, I think it's a little bit of a tough calculus at times. Wow, look at my hair. A little bit of a tough calculus at times for what they're going to do right now, and they're kind of held hostage by this Pete situation. They don't want to act early on it because they don't want to overpay there, but the longer they wait, the more other things play out. All right, here's their current bullpen situation. Minter coming back off of injury. Alzolay didn't even come up, and that shows you how many people they've lost that he's penciled in. Raley, love Raley. Brazabon, love him, but obviously you can't overdo him. Once you overwork him, he seems to go down pretty fast. And then the rest of these guys are interchangeable. So they need a full rebuild of the bullpen. It starts with Edwin. I think we'll get resolution on Edwin a lot quicker than we'll get it on Pete, because I think they need to know whether to pivot to another closer type if they don't end up with Edwin. I think they're going to end up signing 3, maybe even 4 relief pitchers that are going to be on the major league roster. Yeah, Alzolay, they got him to rehab him, I believe. So that's why you would think he'd be coming back right now. But it's been a long time since he's pitched or been in leverage. It's like, what, almost 2 years since he was the Cubs closer. So it'll be interesting to see. But they're going to have to do a lot with their bullpen. I think pretty much everything's on the table except bringing Helsley back. That won't happen. But, expect David Stearns to probably give in here and either bring back Edwin or sign another big-time reliever, maybe one other medium-level reliever, so like 8 or 9 million, like pretty good reliever but not closer type, and then I think a ton of depth guys because that's usually their strategy. And then this is the other issue, and this is something that really upsets me deep in my soul because, man, I've talked with every single one of these guys about having to take control over their own career because the team is not going to keep them healthy. They need to find a way to keep themselves healthy. McGill goes down, Garrett goes down, Kranick goes down, Daniel Nunez goes down, Danny Young goes down, all Tommy Johns, not to mention Drew Smith. Raley had a Tommy John. It's just too many injuries. So they have to figure out something, whether it's their protocols, whether it's the way Carlos uses these dudes, so haphazardly, whether they even care about keeping their guys healthy or not, but they need to be better than this. This is embarrassing. This is actually pathetic. Pathetic. I would have never let this happen if I was on the team last year. At least half these guys wouldn't have blown out. I would have protected these dudes myself. I would have had to jump in front of them myself. Fortunately, there was nobody willing to stand up and talk to Carlos this year. That was just me, I guess. So a little bit of an issue there. And if they continue down this path, they're going to be FUCKED because you cannot injure this many dudes every year. And it's hopefully this is not an actual strategy because it's freaking pathetic and it's not player friendly. And eventually people will catch on. And it's funny as they were bragging about how good they were at keeping people healthy the year before when it had nothing to do with them. So yeah, I'm a little annoyed because these are guys that should be playing. So it pisses me off. All right, what else we got here? Better to get ahead of it before someone shifts the market. Now you're paying way more than expected. Look at Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, NFL affecting the Trey Hendrickson negotiations. That's why I think they'll get ahead of the Edwin Diaz, Mitch. But with Pete, they're just not gonna give him the Godfather offer until they decide what they're just gonna until they decide what the market is. They need to know what they're dealing with, what their stomach is based on what the competitors are. It worked for them last year. I think they'll do it again. Now with Edwin, I think they'll have to act pretty quickly. But it's just like that's the one they have to act quickly on. I think Pete, they're gonna play it out. It sucks, but they're definitely gonna play it out. All right. Why do you think caused that? It's a combination of things. I mean, there's not really any player education going on too much about how to stay healthy. There's a lot of pressure for guys to play even when they feel a little compromised. I know that from the inside. And then look, the manager, I think he's a really good under distress manager. I think he has no idea what he's doing when it comes to bullpen guys and how to keep them healthy or even really how to care about them at all. There's no communication there. There's no feel there. There's no bedside manner when guys get hurt. I'm going to stop there before I get too fired up. But honestly, they could do so much better than this, and they need to do better. So I'm not going to sugarcoat that too much. They could not be injuring this many pitchers, especially relief pitchers. There's no excuse for it. Spread it around a little bit in the first half, and then maybe you won't blow through all your guys and have a total nosedive in the second half when nobody can get to any outs, and you're relying on a whole bunch of pitchers that you didn't want on the staff in the first place. So don't get me started. I guess I already started. Christian Scott is another one that's coming back. This is also exciting. C. Scott. This guy's got real potential, really good sweeper, good competitor, good dude. I almost forgot about him, which is insane. Where's my guy, Christian Scott? So this guy's going to come back, and, this is going to impact their roster as well. I know that, the numbers weren't perfect, but this guy's got real potential. So you throw him in there with Sproat, Tong, McLean. They have depth coming up. Like, I like some of this starter depth. This is something that the Mets simply did not have when I first got to the organization in 22. They had none of it. But you got to love the fact that they have another guy here. I know they're not going to have Big Drip all year, but they do have some depth here. I think, therefore, they need to shoot a little higher with the rotation, and clearly they need to shoot high with that one bullpen spot with being Edwin. So I think they have one big bullet to shoot in all three departments. One reliever, that's big time. One starter, that's big time. And one hitter, that's big time. So it should be Pete, Edwin, and then one starter, whether that's via trade or via signing. Or if you don't get Edwin and Pete, you got to pivot to the other guys in the market, the Bellingers of the world. If it all lines up in that fashion, maybe Cody signs way before Pete and you kind of lose out on that. But they'll have to figure that out. And then obviously there's all this talk about these trades. So, I mean, look, they have a lot to figure out. This is a tough team to get your head wrapped around. A lot of the moves that they made last year backfired. So ultimately now you got to clean up the mess of that a little bit. And it's sketchy. Nimmo's one of their best players. If they trade him, I mean, you got to replace him. If you don't sign Pete and you trade Nimmo, I mean, now you're talking two of your top 5 players are just gone. So I know that they'll replace them and they have a lot of money to do so, but what type of players are they targeting? It's hard to know. Clearly, David's big on defense. So, that's a factor. Do you think it makes sense for the Mets to get Bellinger and Alonso? Only if they trade Nimmo. Then you can go and play Cody in left. Hopefully that bench comes up in center. And then you have Pete, and then you can play Cody at first when you move Pete to DH, and then you're back working it. I could see this. I could see a double move, possibly. Edwin 5 years again. I think that's going to be the team that gets him. So I think it's like he'll get 4-year deals, healthy 4-year deals, and whoever extends to 5, he'll probably sign on the dotted line right away. I don't know if that's going to be the Mets or not. When I watch Edwin, it's fairly clear to me he's going to be a dominant reliever for at least 3 more years. It's just so hard to project beyond that. Even watching him every day, it's just so hard to know. So, I don't know. This is a whole interesting thing. All right, what do we got here, Mitch? Also, there's no salary cap to consider, so it comes down to do you like the player or not. Money isn't really that much an object when you want to win the mess situation. Exactly. The money's not the object. It's more so just this team is built to win. You know, you're going to use every asset you have on the roster to either have them be the ones getting the winning for you, or you're going to be trading them to get more pieces and make your team more balanced to get the winning. So think realistically, it's an intriguing spot because their infield's a little bit of a mess between Beatty, McNeil, Vientos, kind of surrounding Lindor at the moment. You know, maybe you do go after a Bo Bichette. That would change their lineup a little bit. Bo Bichette at second base. Get McNeil out of there. Now you got Bo Bichette up there at the top of the order. That's pretty left-handed some days. Kind of mix it through there. So I could see them going after any combination of Pete, Bellinger, Bichette. Although defensively Stearns won't like Bichette, but I like his offensive approach if he's playing second. I don't know, man. This is just a tough team. Yeah. By Squints is liking that. Bo to second base, Beatty to third base. It's also like Vientos should probably not be playing third ever again. He's probably got to be a first baseman or DH at this point. I know it's tough to give up on that bat, but it did come back to earth quite a bit. And I know we're spending a lot of time on the Mets, but this is like one of those teams that's just so fascinating. This is Mark last year, 17 home runs, 702 OPS. The chase was too high, the whiff was too high, the K was too high, not enough walks, and you see the defense is trash. And then 2024 Mark, so the numbers are up a little better, but it's still a similar profile. So it's not really like a whole lot changed except the way he was impacting the ball. So I can see why they'd be a little skeptical about Mark, but God, when he was right, he gave us a different dimension offensively. You see how he can go all over the park. There's not a lot of guys that the Mets currently have that have this type of natural ability, like the ability to just drive a ball oppo. Like, that's special ability. He hits the ball as hard as anybody. So you don't want to give up on it, you know, but the defense is terrible. He has got to play first, and he's probably be bad at first. So shit, I don't know what you do with Mark. Maybe you sell him to a team that's really offensively challenged. Try to drag some more pitching out of him or more of an all-rounded, well-rounded player. So, man, I don't know, but Mark's sick. Mark's a sick hitter. Heard Beltran taught him to go oppo. Beltran's a great hitting coach if that's the case. I remember telling Mark in the playoffs when he was feeling himself 2 years ago, like, hey, nobody's going to pitch you middle in. They're only going to pitch you away. You have to take your hits the other way. And he finally started doing that, and he started crushing. Even in the Dodgers series, he kind of crushed. He was kind of the only one. But then he came back last year, and I thought he was going to go to superstar status. And then the defense kind of fell apart again, and the offense kind of trended down. So then he ended up getting kind of Wally pipped by one of his buddies, Brett Beatty. Brett Beatty, who had the initial chance, then he got... Love you! Then Beatty had, you know, kind of fallen off. Now he comes back with a vengeance last year. 748 OPS. Defense looked better. Much more confident. 18 homers. You know, one thing you love about him is his bat speed. He's got a lot of natural talent. 86 percentile bat speed, 80% barrel. Like, there's big-time upside in Brett Beatty here. Just got to continue to work on his swing package and how he can maybe do a little bit more than just swing in the same spot all the time. But the battle between Vientos and Beatty is interesting because neither of them have like straight out dominated, but they've both shown flashes of being really good. So that's a little bit of a interesting dynamic too. I mean, there's interesting dynamics all over this roster. Alvarez is the huge prospect, but he struggled. His whole swing was all jacked up last year. He keeps getting hurt with weird hand injuries. Soto's really the only constant, Soto and Frankie. And I would have said Nimmo, but now he's on the block. So there's questions about every single player on this roster offensively. And like, I just don't know how they're going to navigate it. If it were me, I'd largely run a lot of it back. But yeah, you got to figure out that Pete thing, although I know they're going to slow play it. Like I've been saying, this is great. This is great advice for anybody who has real pop. We might have to refill the coffee in a minute. We're only an hour and 41 in here, and I haven't even done 2 teams yet. Still got the Nats and the Phillies coming up after this. But the Mets, it's just a team you just want to look at over and over and over again. So they need to do major work in the bullpen. I know they have a lot of money to spend, as they always do. You know, Steve's the best. I freaking love Steve Cohen. What an owner. you know. And honestly, he gets out of the way. He gets out of the way of David. Like most of these moves, maybe not the Soto thing, but everything else was pretty much Stearns. You know, he's just like, here's the money. I'll support what you're. Well, I hire you for a reason, and now you cook. So it really is on Stearns when he fucks up. But um, I just love having that dynamic. You know, they're going to buy a couple relievers. They're probably going to hunt in every top end starter market. So they'll get probably somebody from there. And then obviously they'll have still enough money left over for Pete if Pete's willing to come into their spot. And yeah, man, he just sold his gold toilet for $12 million. So he's chilling. He's chilling. All right, what else we got in the chat here? Because I'm just staring at these sheets way too much. Do you think players might take a front load for the first season to get a chunk before the possible lockout? I mean, maybe. I'm skeptical that they're going to miss games next year, personally. I mean, there's going to be a lockout because that's the procedure now, but I'm a little skeptical. There's media things that have to be worked out. We'll see. The sport's in a great spot. You can't totally worry about this. You know what? What kills you is a pandemic. You know, I'm making like $9 million the 2020 year, and then all of a sudden the pandemic comes and they institute the national state of emergency and my salary just goes poof. So it's like, dang, like I worked hard to get into that spot and then it all didn't pan out. But I don't think the lockout will crush these dudes. I just don't see them missing a lot of games. I could be wrong, but we'll see. And also, I should note, Maya, you're correct about this. Alvy did look good when he came back. Now, if you notice, there was a swing change that he tried to make earlier in the year and it just didn't work. You know, just didn't work. So he went back to his old, like, kind of two-part load swing. And for me, Alvy's got to go to right center. This is the same exact thing that, Vientos learned, I guess, from Beltran. He's got enough juice to go out to any part of the park. When he tries to pull everything, he can't hit any sliders, and he gets totally, totally exposed. If Alvy starts using that right center field gap, you might see real big-time offensive potential come to play. Vientos is the Pedro Serrano from Major League, unfortunately. And they're saying Mark needs a change of scenery. He might. I've been, it's so funny because I wasn't there last year, but Mark, he just somebody who just didn't get it when he first came up to the big leagues, worried about all the wrong shit. But then he matured so much that second year, and we were all so freaking proud of him, the steps he took. And if he stays with that mindset, then the sky's the limit with his talent. You see that the way he impacts that ball to right center. That's pretty unique for sure. With the way Stearns spoke about Mark, it does not sound like he's going to be traded. He's sort of one-dimensional players. Know what you want to say if you're trying to shop the guy. Yeah, he is. I want to go see if there's an Alvy Oppo shot in here because we all know I love Alvarez. That's Alvarez. We need Alvarez. Here he is. Because when Alvy goes to right center, his swing plays tremendous, just like Vientos's does. It's when he gets into pull mode, is when he's not in a good spot. I mean, that's a great place to be. Not a lot of people hit bombs like that. That ball went all the way into the bullpen. So that's the Mets bullpen out there. Obviously, I spent a lot of time out there. Rosado, that's the bullpen coach, being all fired up that he hit a homer. But when you clear that bench into the bullpen, that's what lefty pull hitters do. Righty guys don't do that going oppo. Like, this is a hell of a swing from Alvy. This is what we need to see more of him from this year. And I freaking love Alvarez. What a great kid. What a hard worker. I will believe in him probably longer than I should, because I just know what type of worker he is and what type of beast he really is. And I think if he can just figure out how to go this way with his swings more often, results will follow. Wow, that went off the top of the wall. That was crazy. I don't remember that play. But one of the issues is you see the way that his front foot kind of leaks open. It's hard to drive the ball the other way when you're so rotational. He needs to figure out a way to kind of keep his head and his chest over the plate a little bit more and drive the ball out to right a little better. But that's my thoughts on Alvy. He was the number one prospect for a reason. Like, he's a beast. Check out this shot. Granted, this is Coors, but check out this shot. I mean, this is a no-doubter to right center. He's got this type of ability. So let's see what the new hitting coaches do with him. That's a whole nother aspect to the Mets. They got a whole new set of coaches this year, so there's a whole new group of people giving them advice, you know? And I agree, baseball has too much momentum to be missing games right now, personally. I think baseball is hot right now. You got to keep capitalizing on that. All right, what else we got here? Oh yeah, that could happen too. Because then it's like if you're in the low tax states, it's already a huge advantage, you would think. Some teams don't utilize it very well, but it is. Oh, I showed 2 of the 4 games you went to, just right there. Yeah, you're an Oppo Alvy good luck charm. But when you're watching Mets games this year, try to notice how often Alvy's pulling off of a slider or trying to pull an outside pitch. If he's doing that, that ain't it. You know, he doesn't have coverage. He's got short arms. He's not designed to pull outside pitches. There are guys that do, but that's not his game. He's got to be hitting line drives and going the opposite field. I love his enthusiasm behind the plate. He could do a little better with his blocking. Sometimes he gets a little lackadaisical with that, and the framing could come back to earth. But I believe it. I believe in it a little bit. He works really hard. I will say that he is a very, very, very strong worker. It should be a prerequisite. Everybody should work hard, but he's really at the top end of the scale. I have to give him credit, and I buy into a lot of Alvy because of that. And we are still looking at the Mets. They just have so many possibilities, you know. All right, so like I said, I think it's you want a high-end reliever, that should be Edwin Diaz. You want a high-end hitter, that should be Pete Alonso, or you're going to have to replace those 2 options, and you need definitely, if you want to impact the rotation, I think you need a high-end guy. So I wouldn't be afraid to go after Skubal, but it just depends on what it takes, you know? Just depends on what it takes, like anything else, and I'm sure there's probably a team willing to dole out even more. So I don't know. Amai would be the top pitcher I would go after. I also love Michael King for this squad. Don't love Framber with this team. Anyway, those are my thoughts. It just sucks. I mentioned it once before, but it would be sure nice to have some of these guys healthy. Daniel Nunez looked unbelievable for a while. And then that was pretty short-lived. All right, what else we got in here? How does Stearns approach a player like Nimmo who has a no-trade clause and trade without alienating him? This is a very delicate situation. Let me speak about this for a second. When I saw that Nimmo popped up on the trade rumors, I said, oh boy, that is not going to sit well with Brandon. Brandon's a very proud player. Brandon got pissed when they did like a Yankees-Mets team a couple years ago, and Andy Martino had Verdugo as the left fielder and not Nimmo. Like, I saw Nimmo go at Andy Martino in the hallway about that, and I was like, damn, like, you read the paper like that? Like, you care about what the talking heads say that much? Like, that's surprising to me. Also, I don't think he liked all the talk about Lindor being the captain, just based on one of the articles I read. Now, I don't know any of that inside. Nimmo's a very gentle, nice, great human being, but I think he's a little proud of a player, and so I think he also likes potentially being a Met for life. I think there's a world in which Nimmo could have a couple more great years and get himself way up on the Met leaderboard, and you might start to think about his number getting up there in the rafters. That's how long he's been a Met. So to me, it's going to be hard to convince him to go. I think he's going to want to stay unless he feels super disrespected, and then he'd probably go to some place he's comfortable, but this is an eggshell situation. It is an eggshell situation. Stern's not the best at communicating. So I would love to be a fly on a wall for this conversation. That would be so exciting to me. But I don't know what's going to happen. I love Brandon. I really love Brandon, but he's definitely a proud player, and we'll see how this plays out. This is an interesting dynamic for sure. Oh, I saw this floated too. Now this would be a good. Now you're talking. Now you're talking 2 big time relievers. Maybe get Minter back at some point. Now you have a little more high end, but you got to hit on these guys. Like they thought they had this with Helsley. It didn't go so well. So we'll see. Let's see here. People assume small market teams are doing everything they can to win or just falling short. Yeah, they love to cut salary in the small markets. It's the worst. I don't think that he cares so much about closing. I think he wants to close, but it's more about the money here. Like, what do you care if you're already getting paid? The reason why people want to close so bad through arbitration is because that's what gets paid in arbitration. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to be a closer only when I was going through ARB. I was like, LaTroy Hawkins needs to get the fuck out of my closing spot when I was with the Rockies so I can get in there and get my ARB salary up. And I did get in there, and then I freaking blew out my elbow. So that's the only time I ever cared. Other than that, I was like, if you're paying me, I'll pitch whatever inning you say. Now, maybe not everybody's like that. If you're Kenley Jansen, of course, you want to keep closing because you're going after records. But I don't know. We'll see. I'd be curious to see what Devin wants to do, whether he cares too much about that. And Nimmo's also the nicest player ever. He signs autographs before and after every game, in his car, all the time. I mean, Nimmo's a great ambassador for the Mets. That's why I'm just shocked at all this discourse that he's on the block. I really am. I felt like he was married to the team. You know? Felt like he was married for the team. Married to the team. Maybe I'm wrong. So I guess we'll see. All right, I guess that's it for the Mets talk. That was a long, drawn-out Mets talk, but what did we learn? Not a whole lot. We learned that they have a tricky offseason ahead. Obviously, the Pete and Edwin things loom the largest. You feel like you poked a little bit of your player development muscle out, showed a little bit of that. You flexed a little bit on the league with the additions of McLean, Sprout, and Tong last year, and hopefully Benj. But, you know, I think it's, I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see what they do. David Stearns, the boy genius. Let's see what he's got up his sleeve this year and how they handle this and how they handle all these conversations and how they handle all these choices. All right, that's it for the Metros. We are now on to the Washington Nationals of the District of Columbia. Now, this is a team that was supposed to be up and coming. They were supposed to be one of the next big teams. They did a great job at the trade deadline a couple years getting a whole bunch of top prospects in trades. James Wood, C.J. Abrams, Keeper Ruiz. There were some pitchers in here. Josiah Gray, Mackenzie Gore, like Mike Rizzo did a pretty good job, I thought, in a lot of these trades. Now, Keeper Ruiz kind of fell off the map a little bit in terms of being a plus player this year. But if you take a look at this lineup, there's a lot of young talent. Look at their ages: 23, 25, 23, 23, 25, 27, 22, 24, 25. Not one player above 27 on this list. So they have some maneuverability. Paul Taboni is the new guy, came over from the Red Sox. They have Blake Butera, the youngest manager in the league. This is a very interesting team. Not a fun team to face all the time. I think James Wood is a super duper star. I know he struggled a little bit in the second half and he might end up being a DH, but I freaking love this guy at the plate. Seaver Abrams has big upside. Dalen Lille, did he come up and play pretty well last year? Yeah, he did. He raked. So this is another possible building block for them at the age of 22 years old, second rounder. So you got to love that. They got some stuff to build with here. When I was looking at the managerial jobs a little bit in my head, I was like, Nationals might be headed towards something. Now they need to fix their pitching, but where could they go in the offensive side? Now maybe catcher. I mean, they could upgrade a lot of these places. The bottom of the order is pretty weak. Hassel didn't look great. House was a big prospect that's been Nasim Nunez is not holding anybody back, you know. And then their bullpen's pretty whatever. Jacob Young is the super defensive guy. Oh, it's Lyle, it's Lyle rhyming with Kyle. Got you. So it's Lyle, not Lille. I thought it was Lille. Sorry about that. All right, what do we got in here? Nats GM said he wants to build a player development monster. Yeah, I mean, that's what everybody wants to do. Duh. All right, let's get into the rotation. They have an interesting rotation, too. Mackenzie Gore is kind of like that tantalizing guy who just hasn't gotten there yet. Cavalli came back off Tommy John last year. Jake Irvin has been particularly a Met killer over the last few years. Brad Lord did okay, I want to say, when he came up. And then Josiah Gray potentially coming back off of Tommy John. It's not a great rotation. They could definitely use more, but I don't think this is probably the moment where they're going to go spend at the top either. Here's Brad Lord. I mean, it's his first time through the league. A little bit uninspiring. Big time ground ball rate. That's good. Nothing great there. How did Jake Irvin end up last year? I've been a fan of Irvin, but I think he's more of a back end. Wouldn't mind him as a back-end guy. Let's see how he turned out last year. Really bad. Holy cow, he did awful. 5.7. Everything backed up. So, yep, they can upgrade here. It's not like even the year before was even that great. Yeah, he threw 187 innings, which is impressive. And I saw him shove against the Mets a few times. But, yeah, he's not holding anybody back either. All right, let's go look at their free agents, who they're losing. It's Jorge Lopez, old Met friend. Paul DeJong, Josh Bell, Colin Poche, Alfaro, Lucas Sims, and Derek Law. Nobody really that they are going to miss that bad. They did pitch Derek Law quite a bit. He was a big part of their team. Travis Sikora is a pitcher I've heard about. Harlan Susana throws really hard. Seaver King is a big-time shortstop. They drafted out of Wake Forest. So they have some guys coming. They always seem to have more guys coming. And Jay is saying no one is good but Gore. I could see that. I mean, I agree, Gore, but let's go look at Mackenzie Gore for a second because this is one of the more frustrating, probably, guys in the league. 30 starts last year, 32 starts the year before, so he's been healthy, which is fantastic. He's left-handed, he throws hard. 4.17 ERA, 185 strikeouts, 159 2/3. That's tremendous in the strikeout category, but too many walks, too many barrels. It seems to me like first time through the lineup, this guy tends to shred everybody all the time. You know, I've seen him shred the Mets a lot of times. First time through the lineup, his fastball looks unbelievable. You know, averaging 95.3 as a lefty. I've seen him up to 98, 99. The breaking balls look really, really sharp. But he always seems to struggle in the second half. I think maybe he comes out of the gate too hot. I've seen him in spring training up to 98, 99. That's not necessarily a great place to be. You know, it's like, why? You should have a little bit more of a slow increase. And as good as that fastball is, it's not really providing any value. Let's see what he did in terms of pitch values this year. Four seam was a neutral, curveball was a +1, slider was a +4, changeup got crushed. So maybe they reworked the changeup. Wouldn't surprise me if he came back with a split or a kick change or something like that. So, you know, this is a player development issue for me. This guy's got some good shit. It's just a matter of, can you figure out how to optimize it? Can you kind of teach him how to pitch a little bit more? Definitely seems to be throwing a little bit more than pitching. Let's look at his stuff plus currently on Fangraphs. Actually has him as below average stuff. So that's sketchy. Only a 101 on the fastball, where it was up to 110 the previous year. Has him here as a cutter that he might have added later in the year, has that. So they're panicking a little bit with the effectiveness of his fastball that they're trying to throw a cutter onto him. Slider league average, curveball below average, changeup way below average. So he's got to find a way to develop another plus pitch. Quick question: when am I doing NL West needs? Well, let's count it out. So I'm going to do I'm going to do AL Central on Friday. Although we have Kike, so I don't know if I'll even get through that. And then eventually after that will come probably Monday would be NL Central. So then you're looking at maybe next Friday or the Monday after that would be NL West. NL West would probably be the last division I get to. Yeah, I don't think it helps that you're throwing a Keibert Ruiz. Keibert Ruiz has been a little bit rough behind the plate. You can run on him all day. Yeah, look at that. I don't know. Caught stealing is actually decent, but look at the framing. -9 in framing. Pop time's really bad, so I don't even know how he got any caught stealing, and he's not blocking either. So that's a bad combination. I don't care how good you can hit, and clearly, you know, at times Ruiz has got some power. Keibert didn't play much last year. At times he's got some pop, but what was he in 24? Yeah, 24 he couldn't throw anybody out. But this reminds me of like a Willeen Rosario situation when I was with the Rockies. It's like you're just crushing the pitching staff when you have a catcher back there that can't do anything. So they need to figure out their catching situation. I don't think they're going to spend a lot. I think it'll be a couple lower end bullpen signings. They'll be scraping the bottom of the barrel there, and then Taboni will be putting his vision on the organization in the background. And I don't think they're going to really go for it that hard. I know they have some guys that are coming into their prime now, but I think they're going to gear up for maybe next year or the year after. So, I don't know. I will say I love James Wood. Gerardo Parra is the first base coach for the Nationals. One of my buddies that I played with, I remember talking to him about a bunch of different players. And when I mentioned James Wood, and this was 2 years ago, 2024, when I first saw him come up, and I said, what do you got on James Wood? And he literally told me, oh, James Wood? Hall of Fame. And I said, what? And, I mean, look, man. Look at the numbers. 825, and that's with him dropping off a freaking cliff last year in the second half. You know? That's really, really bad. Literally dropping off a cliff. How come I can't find this? Okay. I mean, look at this. He's putting up a 88th percentile xWOBA with a 2 percentile K rate and a 5 percentile whiff rate. That's hard to do. So every time he hits the ball, great things happen. Also, look at this spray chart. This is truly a thing of beauty. It's literally all over the field. Now, I've seen some hitting gurus online talking about how James Wood should be trying to pull the ball more. But I'm like, when you can hit the ball oppo like this, here he is off Dolander. I mean, granted, this is Coors, but I don't care. When you can hit the ball oppo like this with such ease, what do you really have to worry about? Just like become an all-around hitter, continue to use the whole field. And now for him, it just comes down to figuring out how to make more contact. He makes more contact, continues to have a good eye at the plate, which he does already. I think this guy's got MVP potential. Silver Slugger, Hank Aaron Award potential. He could be he could be a Yordan Alvarez once he fixes his whiff rate a little bit in the zone. And it's crazy because he's doing it with only a 32 percentile squared up rate with all that pop. So I love James Wood. I love a lot of the dudes that Nationals do actually have. Dylan Cruz is going to be a good player. Probably not a superstar, but a good player. Abrams is a well above average player. Lyle, not Lille, but Lyle, came up, looked pretty good. But they have to figure out these guys at the bottom. What are they going to get out of House and Hassel, who are two prospects? Ruiz kind of falling apart. They're going to need a better catcher. I could see them going after a veteran catcher. That would help their team right now. Not necessarily a Real Muto, but a veteran catcher in general would help. And then the bullpen needs to be completely redone as well. Ferrer's nasty. He's that really nasty lefty. They have some guys with velocity in this group, but they don't have anybody with any type of experience. So I expect them to, bring back similar guys to like Derek Law that they had for a while. They're gonna pick out of that middle tier to the lower tier of relievers, and they'll keep it moving. Trevor Williams, he had Tommy John. Maybe he comes back late in the year as a veteran that can help throw some innings. DJ Hers, who I swore looked like Doug Funny when I looked at him. Let me see if I can get a picture of DJ Hers. Kind of had a sneaky fastball that played. Yeah, this is Doug Funny right here. But got hurt, so he's out of the picture for a little while. That sucks. I mean, you can see with his fastball, 106 strikeouts and 88 2/3. So anyway, it's a little bit on that. And I think we're going to be kind of done with the Nationals. Not a whole lot to really add. I think it's the relief corps. Maybe they're in the market for some mid-level starters. They will not be shopping at the top of the market for anything. Maybe there's a trade to be made. But I think they're just getting their feet wet with their new president of baseball ops, and then they'll kind of go from there. So that's my feeling on them. And now we are up to the Phillies. Phillies are the last team in the NL East. Quick stuff in the chat here before we do the Phillies. Thoughts on Butera as a manager? Look, I don't know him. I know his brother pretty well, who's a great baseball guy. And I know that Butera, in a way, kind of put in some paid his dues a little bit. He managed since he's like 25 years old. The age doesn't matter. It's just about the relationship and how you contribute to winning. I could care less if you're younger than me, older than me. Respect can be gained in so many different ways. I don't think there's any hard, fast rules here. It's pretty crazy, though. 33-year-old manager is awesome. So different, So really young, 30-something-year-old president of baseball ops and a really young manager and a really young team. So fascinating there. All right, let's move on. Philadelphia Phillies. Now, this is an interesting team and an interesting moment. They overwhelmingly won first place last year in the division, 96 and 66. They're a very top-heavy, talent-laden team. Then they go and they lose to the Dodgers in the postseason, and it all just feels like just another year, another disappointing year. And on top of that, they have some big decisions to make. Here are their free agents. Big Kyle Schwarber. They would not have been as good without him. He's kind of the driving force in their clubhouse, but the guy also hit 50 some odd homers, almost 60 homers, so that's a big one. I'm pretty sure they're going to be dying to bring him back. Ranger Suarez, we've talked about him a lot. Been an awesome pitcher. Velocity dropped. How he gets evaluated will be interesting. Bader, I think that's a good fit to maybe go back there. He looked really good with the Phillies. JT, another guy I could see going back. I mean, they might just keep the band together here a little bit. Kepler, sneaky played better last year. That was an interesting move by them. And then there's a bunch of bullpen guys after that. Meza, Trevino, D-Rob, who probably won't, play till midway again if he plays. Joe Ross, kind of a swing guy, and then Buehler and Romano. Those two did not really kind of work out. They only had Buehler for a little bit, and Romano was a disaster the whole year. Now, Dave Dombrowski, who runs this squad, he's just big on like blue chip prospect type of talent guys. So it makes sense why he goes after certain guys, every offseason. Seems to be like first round pedigrees, big time velocity in the bullpen or in the rotation, big time power, or some sort of tool that's, way outlier that he's always seems to be hunting. And this is the lineup currently if they don't do anything. Bryson Stott, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Alec Boehm. There's a big Alec Boehm question. Brandon Marsh, Castellanos, who I've heard is all but gone. Rafael Marchand, Otto Kemp, Justin Crawford. So this is a way worse lineup without Schwarber in it. That's number one. So this lineup is so much more pitchable without him. And the fact that they're also going to probably punt Castellanos off the team and there's no JT, they got some work to do in the lineup department here. And Dombrowski's always big game hunting. Should I say Castellanos or should I say Castellanos? I say both. Castellanos. I don't know. I don't know who he wants it. Probably Castellanos, I would guess. But anyway, I think they're going to punt him. So they're going to be in the market for outfield. I mean, they still need to fix their catcher situation. I don't think they're going to go with a Marchand Stubbs combination. I mean, right now they have Otto Kemp at DH. Yeah, Llanos. All right, sorry. But this is they just have such an interesting team. Literally, Harper and Dombrowski have a fascinating showdown been going on the last few years. Harper's trying to get himself an extension with like 8 years left on his contract, which I'm sure Double D Dombrowski was like, what? And then he says that Harper was a good player, not an elite player anymore in the press. And then Harper's like, what? And then I don't know. I just find that relationship fascinating. Is everything good there? I don't know. I don't know. Something's going on there a little bit. But Harper, he's always been like sort of half hurt every of the last few years, still hitting well. Kind of only plays first now. Doesn't really go in the outfield. Seems like he loves the fan base and the fan base loves him, to Dan's point here. But yeah, seems to be beefing a little bit with the GM. Not always a great place to be. So yeah, they got big work to do offensively, and I think they'll be in on the high end of everything because they have money, and that's Dombrowski's style. So I think Schwarber is the number one priority, bringing him back. That changes their whole lineup right away, obviously. And then I think, what they end up doing with the outfield, with Castellanos probably being gone, and then the catcher spot is important, and they have even more room to add from there. So I think they have quite a bit to do offensively. Now, they have nothing but useful guys on the bench here. Like, these are all solid dudes, but you wouldn't want them as starters. All right, now, rotation. We don't know what's happening with Wheeler yet because he had the thoracic outlet. Hopefully he can come back next year. But on paper, this is kind of what they've had. Sanchez took the leap. Luzardo took a mini leap. Nola, they're looking for him to bounce back. You're kind of married to Nola, so if he's in your 4 spot, I think you're okay. And they still have Taiwan under contract now. They do have Andrew Painter, who just got put on the 40-man. He's the big-time prospect in the organization. Andrew Painter. And he's the guy that everybody's excited about, he can come up and really impact their rotation, and then Taiwan probably gets the boot out of it. Who's Aiden Miller? This is a hitter. Pretty good numbers in AA, AAA as a 21-year-old. 138 weighted runs created plus in the minors this year. 184 in his time in AAA. It was only 8 games, but first rounder, shortstop. This guy's going to impact their club pretty soon. It'll be interesting to see where they fit him in with Trey there. Trey can maybe move around, or maybe he can move around, but you got to love that they have a shortstop prospect coming. That's good. There's also Gage Wood. Gage Wood is a possible fast tracker. He had a lot of strikeouts. We all saw him in the College World Series, Arkansas guy. So they have some pitchers that are kind of coming. I actually don't hate their starting rotation right now. I think he's all right. Harper's 33 now, was 16 on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Now he's lived more years of his life as a guy than not. Maybe not surprising. He thought he could ask for that. I've just never seen anybody try to get an extension literally that far ahead. Like, that's something that you just don't see. It doesn't make any sense. Hold on. I don't know, that to me, like, that's crazy. Like, you got to get a lot closer to free agency before it's saying that. So, wait, did I pronounce Painter wrong? This is Ponter? Ponter? I don't care. He's Painter. Painter to me. Andrew Painter. Fuck his pronunciation. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, all right, bullpen. So Duran, he's great. Yeah, Mitch is effing with me. Yeah. You're joking. I was like, if his name is Ponter, then he can just fuck off. All right, Yohan Duran, Alvarado, steroids, Matt Strahm, Kerkering. Now, will Kerkering be back? I mean, it seems crazy because he's still a good pitcher, and we saw actually some things with his slider that could go back the other direction. You might get some better results. But considering how that year ended, do they bring him back? I don't know. Tanner Banks seems to have been around for a little bit there now, and then there's 3 other guys. So I expect them to have to make more bullpen moves as well. I mean, I love them at the back end right now with Duran, Alvarado, and Strahm, but I think they're going to need a lot more than that. So they have some work to do. Maybe not as much in the starting rotation. I think Wheeler's a big deal if he's healthy or not, but definitely in the bullpen, and then they have probably 3 moves to make on the offense. So you're looking for 3 offensive moves, a bunch of bullpen moves, and maybe 1 starter move, but I think they're going to be very aggressive. That's Dave Dombrowski in a nutshell, right? He's hyper aggressive type of guy. No real injured guys right now at the moment. Griff McGarry was a guy, right, who got called up a little bit, I think, maybe? Yeah, Gage Wood down here. Michael Mercado. He got a little cup of coffee as well. He's in the picture. It's just knowing Dombrowski, they're gonna take some big swings. I mean, Schwarber would be the big one. You go sign Schwarber to what, like a $35 or $40 million a year, whatever he's going to get deal. That's going to change some things financially for your team, but they're just losing too much offensively. They've had such an offensive team, a tough team to face the last few years, but they cannot afford to lose all of the Schwarber, Real Muto, Castellanos group. I know Castellanos isn't what he used to be, but still a threat. So they're going to have to replace 2 to 3 guys there, and they're big time. So that's a big deal. Justin Crawford's looking to get himself in the mix here as well. He's a big prospect for them. He's currently penciled in center field. So that'll be interesting to see what they do there. And then to recap, I really like the rotation with Painter in there on the back end as well. I mean, they're definitely relying on Wheeler to be healthy and for Nola to bounce back. I don't think they're too worried about Walker, although he pitched better last year, right? What was Taiwan's season last year? It was definitely a lot better. Bottom line results, I don't know about the the expected results weren't as good, but the bottom lines were better. 4.08 in 34 games, even showed a little bit out of the pen. Ultimately, this was probably a ill-advised signing for the Phillies, and I kind of knew it at the time, having played with Ty. He's a warrior, great dude, but he was working with a lot of physical issues that last year with the Mets, and then he goes and signs a 4-year deal with the Phillies, and I'm like, oof, I don't know if this body's going to hold up, but, you know, he pitched a little better last year, so that's good. They got something out of him. I don't know. Any other thoughts on the Phillies? Let's see what we got in here. Griffin McGarry isn't Rule 5 protected. He's probably gone after the winter meetings. Yeah, okay. A lot of talk about them trading bullpen arms. Strom's come up a bunch. I could see that, but they're going to have to replace a lot of these guys. Kerkering's an interesting case. They already picked up that Alvarado option, so they're willing to pay him a lot of money. And then Duran. I mean, this is very Dave Dombrowski. Velocity. Strom's starting to trend down in that area. I could see them get him out. Signing Tucker seems like the Phillies' way. You know, it could be. It does. You can never count them out on any of the big guys. So say you were to sign Kyle Tucker and you were to play him in right field. I mean, it's throwing another lefty into the mix. You could easily offset that with another righty, but I mean, that would be a big deal. And then another big elephant in the room is Bohm. Man, Bohm's been like kind of a target in Philly for a long time. I mean, he was hated, then he was loved. Oddly, after he said he hated it there. And he's basically the same hitter every year, you know, mid 700s OPS, lots of doubles, not a lot of actual homers, pretty decent batting average, kind of a slightly below average fielder. I've always felt like he's a good player. He's just not a great player. And there's been some frustration there. You know, it's a lot like being a Yankee fan, being a Philly fan in a way. Like, all you expect is perfect play at all times and an all-star at every position, you know? That's all you expect. And Bohm's not quite that. He's a good player, but he's not a perfect player. He's not an all-star, really. So I can see why they want to upgrade there. I could see Murakami being a fit here because he's that big type of power bat. Murakami, Okamoto. Let's go look a little bit at some of the batting free agents while we're looking at these hitters. Because I definitely feel like they're going to be in play for one of the top projected WAR guys with the bat. I mean, Bregman, trade away Boehm, maybe. I mean, I know they want Schwarber back. That's obvious. I don't think they're not a player for obviously a Pete. JT is another one they got to think about bringing back. I've seen them connected to Bader. Arise is a weird fit. I don't know what's going to happen with Arise. I think his market's going to be super weird. Ozuna? I don't know. Mike Yastrzemski as a possible Castellanos replacement? Maybe. Max Kepler running back. Jesse Winker. Yeah, Ozuna from the Braves, maybe? I mean, I'm just trying to figure it out, where they're going to go here. Yeah, there was some nonsense with Castellanos last year with some of these questions, like he's having great games and they're asking him about why he's on the team and why he's starting and all this stuff that happened with... they just know they can get a soundbite out of him, basically. So, good comment here by Dan, but... I could see them in on almost all these guys. Even Bo Bichette, maybe? I mean, I know they have Bryson Stott, but maybe you put Bo at third? I don't know. Maybe not. I could see Murakami, though. That would be an interesting one. Eugenio Suarez, I don't love the fit there. God, they really need Schwarber back. They're not the same team without Schwarber, so I think they're going to have to go all out for that. That's kind of going to be the big deal. Pitching... I think they're more in the bullpen mode. So let me just try to look at some of the relievers and try to figure out who are Dave Dombrowski type guys. Ryan Helsley is the first one that's obvious to me. Ryan Helsley seems like a Philly all day long. Suarez as well, great velocity guy. So Helsley, Suarez, I could see. Even Hunter Harvey is the type of guy they could take a flyer on because he's got such good arm. Fairbanks. I don't think they'll be in the Iglesias business. I could see them jumping right back into the Dominguez or Soto business. I don't know if they love Brad Keller because he's not a big strikeout guy, and I think the Phillies are more big on strikeout rate. Finnegan, I don't know. I mean, obviously D-Rob always, if he's back in the mix again, you never know. See, Romano was like their swing last year at like a closer type with big velocity and strikeout numbers. I could see Pierce Johnson being a fit with this club. Maybe a Loizaga. They're not going to go Kenley since they already have a closer more than likely. They might even like Stanek because he still throws hard. I'm just thinking it to myself about the way Dombrowski usually goes about it. It tends to be more of a stuff type of situation. Maybe even like a Liam Hendricks if his showcase looks all right. You know, maybe you buy into that a little bit. Maybe Canely as an option. They're going to have a lot of options, but typically that's where Dombrowski tries to shop. Is a little bit more in that aisle. And I totally can see this, by the way. Helsley's going to go to the Phillies. I just really think Helsley is a good fit for the Phillies in terms of how they usually are. I could definitely see that happening. So we'll see what happens here. Phillies need someone you can name a hoagie or a limited edition chip after. Ooh, Kopech's another one. Great call. Kopech's another one on the stuff plus side of things. You know, big-time velocity, big-time prospect pedigree. I could see Dombrowski being into that. I don't know. They're a tough team. They're a tough team to crack. They're in first place, but they cannot they cannot rest on their laurels. They would be a way worse team without Schwarber and without JT. So those are two spots that they're going to have to figure out right away. And then, I mean, I think they have to get better from where they are. I don't think they can sit still and expect it to be great. I think Wheeler is a big factor. There's just so many unknowns with the Phillies. How healthy is Wheeler? How are they feeling about Nola coming back? Those are the big questions with the rotation. Also, where they really think Painter's at. And then the three big spots in the lineup. And then, the bullpen, too. They actually have a lot to do. Considering they're a first-place team, they could fall off really, really quickly if they don't continue to invest into this team. Where's Spotrac? Let's go look at the Phillies for a sec. I mean, they do spend. You got to give it to them. They spend the money. But Schwarber, they're going to have to spend with him too. Wheeler, $42 million a year. Wow. Turner, 27. Harper, 25. Nola, 24. Casty, 20. Taiwan, 18. Luzardo, 17. Bohm, 10. Alvarado, 9, which they picked up with no hesitation, which is crazy after being exposed. Duran, $8 million. That's a bargain. Strom, 7.5. That's fine. That's why he's probably has some trade value because that's fair. Edmundo Sosa's making good money off the bench. Maybe more than anybody would know. Christopher Sanchez, wow, he's locked into a great deal. That extension was tremendous when they did that. Marsh is a good player. Stott's a good player. Tanner Banks, and then it just gets into the underbelly of the situation. They're relying a lot on Painter coming up and being good. And then I think, just going to have to see how they address it offensively. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just looking at the Phillies' financial situation. How much guys they're spending here. Adam, do you think the media / fans overestimate the impact of a big market on player struggles? No. Some guys, they're just. You'd be surprised how many teammates I've had that playing in a big market's their nightmare. They just don't like the attention. They don't like the pressure. They definitely read too much Twitter. There's a lot of people that they just can't handle it. So I don't think it's too much is made of it. I think Devin Williams actually showed that he could handle it. I mean, he's getting booed coming into the game, and he still ended up doing great. And he actually turned those boos into cheers by the end of the year. So to me, Devin Williams came out the other side of it even stronger. But Helsley, yeah, I mean, right now, would you feel comfortable running him back in the big market? Probably not. I could see the Phillies doing it because it's just a fresh start. But like the Mets aren't going to bring him back, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? He was so spooked last year. They probably got a decent idea about that and about where he's thinking. For anyone that cares, this is some information. The team of mostly MPB vets in Baseball United are currently throwing combined no-hitter. It doesn't make a big. That does not surprise me at all. Here we go. I was sorry that I didn't share that screen for a second. How many of those dudes that hate the big markets are from the South? Probably most of them are the Midwest, right? Probably most of them. So there's a lot of fear that people think. I don't know, man. People have all sorts of ideas about places they've never really been to or lived in. Twitter / Reddit are the apps any big leaguer needs to delete. Yes, immediately delete. And also, like on your Instagram, like the way I had it set up is you can't DM me unless I follow you. So I'm unreachable. I had Instagram, I could scroll around and mess around if I wanted, post things, but then I was unreachable. Like, you should not be able to reach me. Didn't mean people didn't try. People would still hit me up on like Venmo and tell me that I owed them money if I gave up a run or something. So, well, obviously the gambling has changed a lot of the insane, irrational behavior of fans, but overall it's just like stay off the socials. Too many guys don't do this though. There's way too many guys that don't get it. They go on the freaking phone after the game, they go right to X or Twitter and they type in their name in the search and they read what people have to say. I can't think of any worse way to behave as a baseball player. That will erode your mental game, erode your confidence forever. You got to be better than that. So, I totally agree with this comment by Daniel. You got to get off of that. And Maya's on the same page. I mean, you just got to. You cannot allow them to own you. You know what I'm saying? In your mind, you got to basically say, I'm doing this for me and for my teammates. This free agency is so damn long. Is there any way to shorten it? There's no real way to shorten it. I've thought about this a lot. Signing deadlines don't work. I think trade deadline would be the thing that would help the most. Trade deadline, or maybe you could have an entire freeze where nothing can happen. Maybe if that happened from Now, I know the union wouldn't love this, but I would be okay with it because nothing really happens anyway. But if it's an actual freeze, like an actual thing's imposed where there's a freeze from, like, I don't know, December, call it 21st through January, call it 5th, then at least there's like a little bit of a sometimes a little bit of a you'd feel a little bit of pressure maybe to get the deals done before the break, so you can kind of get some of your shopping list done before Christmas and Hanukkah and all the New Year's and all the holidays. But they don't do that, so it just kind of trickles in, trickles out, and in a way it's cool because we have things to talk about all off season. But I don't know, it's just not exciting. Just not exciting. Yeah, we talked about this earlier. This is there has to be more to this situation. But I mentioned how the Angels are I think they're very gung-ho on their ability to keep guys healthy now, and so I think that's why they would take on a Grayson situation. This is the reality, Maya, for a lot of players. It's so pathetic. I'm telling you, when I'm manager, I'm doing all sorts of crazy shit to avoid this. I need to keep our minds in the right place. The mob doesn't matter in this situation. You know what I mean? Like, just always be nice to the fans. Do not feel like they're turning on you. Take a page out of Pete's book. Pete connects with the fans really well, but also does a good job of not reading everything that's said about him. I think that's key. And there's burners too. Like, literally people who they just make an account to crap on you, and they're not even, there's no accountability there. So it's like, it's insane. You can't worry about what some random dude with a made up username that lives in his mom's basement is saying about you on Twitter. It doesn't make any sense. They don't understand it. Yeah, this is not going to happen. Like, the league will never want to go free agency after 4. What's crazy is the players probably had opportunity to do this a couple years ago. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they could have probably pushed back for some things, and it just didn't happen. So, I don't know. Interesting. But these negotiations are absolutely brutal and cutthroat. I could see the O's try and flip Taylor Ward. A team like the Pirates makes sense for Mitch Keller, but then they'd only get 1 year of Taylor Ward. Taylor Ward's a 1-year dude, so if you get Taylor Ward on a team, you better be comfortable that you're going to compete this year. So, have to be more of a winning person. Okay, did we cover it? I think we kind of covered it. Do I have anything else to look at here? This was a thing that I ran into on Reddit recently, which kind of showed it was kind of a better way of laying out how much your spin matters based on your arm slot. And there was a different leaderboard, but it was an interesting thing to poke around at, where it's kind of like the amount of endured vertical break relative to your release height, things like that. Vesia still came on top, with the higher overall adjusted IVB. So that was interesting. And then this one was about hitting. This one was like modeled xWOBA, which was based on swing tracking bat tracking metrics versus actual WOBA. And you can see Aaron Judge is in a world of his own up there in the top right corner. So basically all the bat tracking metrics were pointing towards him being the best, and he is the best. But it's interesting to see the other people in his realm. Sal Stewart looks really good in this metric. Carter Jensen. Jahmai Jones looks good in this metric. There's a whole lot of players, but I thought it was interesting to see, some of these dudes that, by their swing were supposed to be really good. Anyway, it's just interesting to look at. So that's probably it on that. And then let's go head back to the chat for a second, then I'll say goodbye. I always said the Orioles have too many pitchers and not enough quarter infielders. How do the Orioles have too many pitchers? Their pitchers stink. They've got a few good pitchers. So I don't agree with that. I think they need more pitching. The pitching was their downfall of last year, and I think they're going to... I don't understand the Taylor Ward move, but I feel like maybe you're being sarcastic. I think you're probably being... Yeah, you are being sarcastic. You're totally right. You're being sarcastic. Sorry about that, Philip. I just don't think the Pirates are going to win, even with getting him. I don't think they're going to win even just one more bat. They had their entire lineup was under 100 OPS plus last year. That's tough to overcome. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't have enough information on that, but I mean, dude, like Harper's aggressive. I mean, all these guys are aggressive, yelling at people. I mean, dude, aggressive. But I get it. The people who have the most incentive to keep the no salary cap and the system the way it is are the superstar players. Those are the people who have the most incentive. Nobody wants the cap necessarily, but the people who like the status quo are the superstars. Those are the ones that get broken off the most. The middle class is the people that get, their value just degraded off the cliff because of the current system. So of course it's the big time guys that are going to have a problem with it. And this is my point. I hope there's no lockout. I mean, I think there'll be a lockout, but it's all about games missed. If there's a lockout but no games missed, I think the fans are fine. It's just like, don't miss games, right? So we'll see. And yes, I realized about this sarcasm at the last second. So sorry about that. The more I thought about it, I was like, there's no way he's serious. Oh, man. Yeah, we linger in a group chat from time to time. That happens. Sometimes dudes will be on it just dormant for a while that people don't even realize they're on it and they're on a different team now. And then they pop back in like, hey, everybody's like, whoa. But anyway. All right. This was a good show. We went a long time, 2 hours and 30 minutes. Friday, we're going to have Kike on. I have to figure out the design for that show, how long he can give us. If he can give us a long time, we might just build it around him. I have so much to watch. A lot of Game 7, Game 6 stuff, a lot of stuff about his elbow. I want to watch him pitch a little bit, get his thoughts on that. I mean, he's going to be a great guest. But if we have enough time, we'd love to do the Central. Now, I don't think I'll be spending nearly as much time on either Central Division as I did on those Eastern Divisions. Those were ridiculous. I mean, we just care a lot about those teams on this stream, obviously, right? Mets, we probably did 45, 50 minutes on the Mets alone today. But whatever, we'll do AL Central next. They have an interesting division. They had a bunch of playoff teams. So we'll see. We're also definitely going to get into Hall of Fame now that the ballot's been released. That'll probably be the next topic once we get through these teams. And then we'll go from there. It's just going to be ongoing. We'll keep monitoring the winter leagues and everything else. But appreciate you guys. Thanks for hanging with me on the stream today. That was fun. And I'll see you guys in a couple days on Friday when Kike's here. All right. See you later. I think I might have not changed the picture. It might be Nolan again. All right. Peace. See you guys. Bye-bye.